Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you are from. Also, what time is it? They say the dead whisper through the walls, but in my hometown, they scream beneath the floorboards. The night it all began was quiet, almost too quiet. You ever get that feeling where the air around you isn't just still, it's watching, like the silence is holding its breath right beside you? That's what it felt like at exactly 2:03 a.m. in the house I inherited from my grandmother, tucked into the rotting edge of a dying forest where even the birds refused to sing. Her death had been sudden, too sudden. The kind that gets buried in sealed envelopes and whispers behind the hands of neighbors. But what struck me more wasn't the way she died. It was how the house waited for me. From the first time I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. Not broken wrong. Not call a plumber wrong. But the kind of wrong that makes the hair at the back of your neck stiffen, for no reason you can explain. The kind that prickles your skin even when you're standing in sunlight. I thought maybe it was just grief. That creeping feeling of standing in a space where someone you loved once breathed, and now never will again. But that theory died the second night. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it. A soft click under my feet. Not a creak, a click. Sharp, intentional. Followed by a low whistle. Almost curious, I froze. The bathroom window was shut, so were the doors. The pipes didn't make that noise. And I hadn't stepped. I was still. Completely still. Yet the sound came again. Click, click, whistle. This time it wasn't directly beneath me. It was to my left, then to my right, then behind. It was moving. The toothbrush slipped from my hand, and the sound stopped instantly. Gone. As if it had never existed. You know that terrifying half-second where your mind races for an answer but finds none. That awful emptiness before the panic sets in. That was me. I bent down, slowly, picked up the toothbrush, stood, and heard it again. This time, from the hallway behind the door. Click. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next week, the sounds returned, always between 2:00 and 3:00 a.m., always beneath the floor, always moving. Sometimes it was footsteps, sometimes scratching. Once, and I wish I was lying, it was humming, a soft, tuneless hum. A child's voice, off, key, dry, like someone who hadn't had water in years. I ripped up floorboards in desperation. I checked for pests, rodents, faulty heating. Called in a local contractor who gave me a look like he didn't want to be there the moment he stepped onto the property. Place feels heavy, he muttered before pretending to check the crawl space. He left in less than an hour. Said everything was normal. But before he drove off, he leaned out his truck window and said, "Don't go digging too deep. This house has secrets that prefer to be left alone." Then he peeled off, tires squealing like a man running from something he didn't want to admit he saw. It wasn't long before the dreams began. They weren't just nightmares, they were visits. Every time I closed my eyes, I was in the same place, the crawl space under the house, only it stretched on like a labyrinth, the dirt walls pulsing like skin, breathing slowly. And I wasn't alone. Shadows moved in corners, just beyond reach, and something whispered my name over and over again. Not in a threatening way, but like it was waiting for me to answer, like it had been waiting for a long time. One night, I finally whispered back, and everything changed. The following day, I found a door in the basement that hadn't been there before. A wooden door, ancient and warped, nestled into the stone wall like it had grown there. The handle was iron, cold. I should have turned around. I should have called someone. I should have done anything but open it. But I did. And behind it was a staircase that should not have existed, spiraling downward into complete darkness. I don't know how far it went. I lost count after 70 steps. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then stabilized. The air got thick, like I was breathing in water. And then I heard it again. Click, click. whistle. This time, it wasn't beneath me. It was in front. I ran. I don't even remember turning around. My legs just moved. I nearly broke my neck scrambling up those steps, slamming the door shut behind me, nailing it closed with every piece of wood I could find. But the nails bent overnight. The next morning, the door stood wide open. I started keeping a journal then. It was the only way to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. I logged every noise, every dream, every new scrape on the walls. And as the days passed, I began to notice a pattern. The sounds grew stronger the more I remembered. Every time I opened a box from my grandmother's attic, old photos, dusty trinkets, ancient books in languages I couldn't read. The nights got worse. It was like the house was punishing me for remembering her. Or maybe it wasn't the house. Maybe it was her. You see, the thing about my grandmother was that she was quiet, not shy, just secretive. Even when I was a kid, she never spoke about her past. Never had visitors, no friends, no family but me. The neighbors said she was kind, but odd. That she talked to herself in the garden. That she sometimes stood outside at night barefoot, humming to the trees. The same tune I heard beneath the house. One of the boxes in her attic was locked. Heavy. No key. I smashed it open with a hammer. Inside was a collection of audio tapes, labeled only with dates, all between 1973 and 1978. 5 years, 50 tapes. I listened to the first one. It started with static, then a low hum. Then a voice, not my grandmother's. A man's voice, smooth and calm, speaking slowly. Session 1. She's asleep. I think it's working. The chant has settled into her dreams. She murmurs it now without prompt. The door responds. Soon we'll know if the pact holds. That was it. Every tape after that was more terrifying than the last. The voice spoke of binding rituals, sacrifice, blood memory, and most of all, the thing beneath. By the 10th tape, it wasn't just one voice. There were several, chanting, whispering, screaming. One tape ended with my grandmother's voice, distant, trembling, terrified, saying, "Don't let him out. Even if I die. Especially if I die." The whispering under the house grew louder after that. One night, I woke up to find muddy footprints, leading from the basement to the side of my bed, barefoot, human, small, like a child's, but too long. The toes stretched unnaturally, curved slightly like claws, and the humming. It was right next to my ear. I stopped sleeping after that. I started researching. Old town records, newspaper clippings. Nothing about rituals, nothing about deaths or missing people. Until I dug deeper. Found a police report from 1974. A young girl had gone missing in the forest behind the house. No body found. Case went cold. 2 years later, another disappearance. Then another. 5 total, all children. All under 10. All vanished within a mile radius of the house. But my grandmother's name, never mentioned. Never even interviewed. I began to wonder if the house had always been hers, or if it had once belonged to someone else, someone whose name had been erased, replaced, hidden. And why had she told no one about these things? Unless she was protecting them, or protecting me. I had to know the truth, so I went back into the basement. This time, I brought salt, chalk, my phone, a hammer. I stepped over the broken nails, walked through the wooden door, down the spiraling steps, 60, 70, 80. The air grew colder. The walls oozed moisture that smelled like rust and old milk. And then, at the bottom, I found it. A room, carved from stone. Walls covered in symbols drawn in what I swear looked like dried blood. And in the center, a mirror. Not a normal mirror. This one didn't reflect me. It showed a room just like the one I stood in, but not the same. In the reflection, the symbols were moving. The air shimmered. And something stood in the middle, facing away, pale skin, long black hair, wearing a nightgown, humming. I whispered, "Grandma." It turned around, and I realized with a sinking horror that it wasn't her. It wasn't even human. Its mouth stretched too wide, its eyes were holes, and its fingers, they were still wet. With something black, it smiled, and the mirror cracked. I turned and ran again. But this time, the door didn't close. The staircase didn't end. I ran and ran, but I didn't move. The steps looped endlessly. I screamed. I cried. My flashlight died. Then I heard it. A voice. My grandmother's, clear, calm, stern. He's awake now. You brought him back. He needs a new name to wear. Yours will do. Then everything went dark. I woke up in bed at 2:03 a.m. clean,
Safe, no mud, no blood.
just silence, except click, click, whistle from the hallway. Closer, and in the mirror above my dresser, I didn't see myself anymore. The next morning, I didn't get out of bed. I just sat there, gripping the sheets, watching the mirror, waiting, hoping it would reflect my face again. Not the thing I saw last night. That pale imposter with the crooked grin and hollow eyes. I thought maybe it had been a dream. A hallucination. Stress, sleep deprivation. But then the reflection blinked. Not me. It blinked. Out of sync with my own eyes, and smiled wider, like it knew I was watching. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I couldn't. My body refused to obey. All I could do was stare and listen to the blood pound behind my ears. My mouth was dry, my breath short and uneven. Something inside me whispered that if I moved, even an inch, the thing would step through the glass. That it wasn't trapped behind it at all. It was invited, waiting for one wrong move to come closer. It disappeared after 12 minutes. I counted. Then, just like that, my own face returned, but it didn't feel like me. Not fully. My features were the same, but something behind the eyes was wrong. Like a mask too perfectly carved. I touched my reflection, and the glass felt warmer than it should have. Almost like it had just been used. Like someone had leaned against it from the other side. I left the bedroom door open that day. I made sure every window in the house was unlocked, the front door wide enough that I could bolt if I needed to. But somehow, despite every urge in me to escape, I stayed. There was this invisible pull now, like the house was sinking hooks into my skin, keeping me close. And the more I thought of leaving, the heavier my limbs became. Around noon, I got a call. No ID. I answered anyway. What I heard chilled me deeper than the coldest night I'd ever spent in that house. It was my grandmother's voice. Calm. Gentle. Like she used to sound when I was a child, whispering bedtime stories. "Sweetheart," she said. "He likes you." Then the line went dead. No static. No click. Just silence. I sat on the floor for hours after that. Eyes fixed on the phone, heart hammering. My grandmother had been dead for 7 months. I'd watched her buried. I knew she was gone. But there was no mistaking that voice. What did she mean? He likes me. I didn't want to know. But curiosity is a brutal parasite. It doesn't care what's good for you. It eats you alive from the inside until you have to find out more, even if it means destroying yourself. So I listened to another tape. This one had no introduction, no date, just her voice, my grandmother, speaking fast, breathless, panicked. They said he came before the house, before the forest, that it was built around him, to contain him. But we failed. Every few decades he stretches his arms, reaches out, touches someone new. He needs a name to wear, a face to walk among us. She sobbed. I'd never heard her cry before. Then she whispered. I gave him mine. For a time. But he's growing stronger. He wants a younger mask. The tape clicked off. I dropped it. Backed away from the player like it might explode. Every inch of this house, every floorboard, every brick, every speck of dust, suddenly felt infected. As if I were inside something living, breathing, watching me with lidless eyes hidden in the cracks. I packed a bag that night. Keys, wallet, clothes, flashlight, tapes. I told myself I was leaving and never coming back. I told myself I wasn't going to die screaming under this roof. I made it to the front door, hand on the knob. Then the whispering started again. From inside my bag, I opened it slowly. The tapes were gone, replaced with a photo of me, sleeping, in my bed. From last night, I don't own a camera. That's when I realized the house wasn't letting me go. Not because it needed me to stay, but because I had already become part of it, piece by piece, thought by thought. And the worst part, I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten, or drank water, or seen the sun. I checked the windows. They were covered in thick grime. No light came through. I opened one, but outside it wasn't the street anymore, it was trees. Thick, twisted, endless. I lived in a neighborhood. I should have seen houses, cars, people. Instead, there was only forest, dense and black and wrong. And even though the leaves didn't move, I could feel things watching me from behind the trunks, shifting slightly whenever I blinked. The world outside had changed, or maybe I had crossed into something else, something I couldn't escape. I slammed the window shut, paced for hours, tried to write, tried to pray, tried to remember what normal felt like. But every time I looked up, the mirror showed something different, a different face, always close to mine, always smiling. I covered the mirror with a sheet. It pulsed beneath it, like it was breathing. That night, the door to the basement opened on its own. I should have ignored it. I didn't. I took a knife, a lantern, went down slowly, each step heavier than the last. The spiral staircase greeted me again, that impossible descent. But this time it wasn't the same. This time, it was shorter, much shorter. Only 20 steps down, I reached a new room, one I hadn't seen before. It was a child's bedroom, a crib, toys, faded wallpaper with stars and moons. And in the middle of the room, a single mobile hung from the ceiling, spinning slowly, playing that same haunting tune I'd heard so many times. That off-key, hollow humming, and beneath it, a pile of teeth, human teeth. Some small, some not. Then I saw the writing on the wall, drawn in what looked like nail scratches. I am not Eloan, Chiwars Minandu. I turned. The reflection in the crib's shattered mirror wasn't mine. It was a child's. A little boy, eyes gouged out, mouth stitched shut. Behind him a shadow moved. It stepped closer. No face, just the suggestion of one. And then it whispered, right in my ear, "You'll make a fine mask." I bolted, fell halfway up the stairs, slammed the basement door shut. This time, I didn't nail it. I didn't even touch it. Because I saw something carved into the wood. Something new. Fresh. My name? And below it, a date. Tomorrow's. I didn't sleep that night. Would you? With your name carved into a door that shouldn't know it, followed by a date that hadn't come yet. The worst part wasn't the fear. Fear, I could understand. Fear made sense. It's when things stop making sense that you realize your sanity is slipping like wet paper through your fingers. I watched the clock strike midnight and counted every tick past it like they were countdown beeps to something waiting just beyond the veil. A veil that grew thinner with every second, and I wasn't alone. I felt it. You know how sometimes someone stares at you from across a room, and you feel their eyes before you even turn your head? That's how it was now, except the stare came from inside the walls, inside the mirror, inside me. The sheets covering the mirror were still, but I knew it was looking. I knew. And it wasn't just looking, it was learning, memorizing every twitch of my hands, the way my breath quickened, the tremble in my lip when I whispered prayers I hadn't said in years. It was studying me like someone might study a costume they planned to wear to a party. And it planned to wear me. At 3:03 a.m., I heard my voice, calling from downstairs, just once. Calm, gentle, perfectly mimicking the way I said hello. When I answered calls, I didn't respond. And it didn't call again. But I swear to you, I heard it moving after that, quietly, like bare feet on old wood, circling the living room, walking up the stairs, slowly, one step at a time, pausing outside my bedroom door, not knocking, not scratching, just standing, so still it made my chest seize. I didn't breathe, I didn't blink. Then, the doorknob turned. Not rattled, turned. It was locked. Thank God it was locked. And it stopped halfway before letting go. A few seconds passed, then footsteps again, this time retreating. Only they didn't go down the stairs. They went into the guest room across the hall, And that's when the humming started. I knew that tune now. Every slow, off-key note of it. It wasn't even a song. It was a ritual, a sound older than language. Something that crept between generations, slithered down family trees, and waited for the perfect host. My grandmother had carried it once. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I tore the mirror from the wall. I broke it, smashed it into shards, screamed until my throat bled. Every piece showed a different version of me. Some laughing, some weeping, some mouthing things I couldn't hear but felt. My hands were shaking so violently I cut myself picking up the glass, and as the blood spilled across the floor, I saw it. The reflection in one shard didn't match my movements. I blinked. It smiled. Then it melted into smoke. I cleaned the mess, or tried to. But the blood wouldn't come up. Not fully. It soaked into the wood like it belonged there. Like the house had been thirsty. That afternoon, I did the only thing I hadn't tried. I left. Or at least, I tried. I packed a bag again. Nothing fancy. Just essentials. I grabbed my car keys, opened the front door, and saw a dirt path that hadn't been there before. Where the road used to be. Where my neighbors' houses should have stood, there was only forest. Thick, unnatural trees that leaned in too close, their branches creaking despite the absence of wind. The path cut through them, narrow and freshly carved, lined with stones that had symbols etched into them. I could have turned around. I almost did. But something about that path pulled me, so I followed it. I walked for what felt like hours. Time bent in those woods. The sun never rose or fell. The sky remained a dull, rotting gray, and the shadows never shifted. I passed broken toys. A rusted tricycle, a stuffed rabbit missing its eyes, a baby's sock crusted with mud. And then I saw the trees ahead shift, just slightly, like something massive had just moved between them. But when I reached that spot, nothing, just more trail, until I heard the laughter. Children, dozens of them, light airy, echoing like wind chimes made of teeth. I ran, the path narrowed, thorns scratched at my face. The trees grew taller, thicker, and then the air changed. Heavy, rotten, like something long dead had been festering there for centuries. Then I saw it, a clearing. And in the center, a stone altar, ancient and cracked. On it, a mirror, not broken, perfectly intact, and standing behind it her, my grandmother, eyes black, skin sunken, mouth sewn shut with hair. She raised a finger and pointed at the mirror. I should have run again. I didn't. I stepped forward, looked into it, and saw myself, smiling, next to a child I'd never met, holding her hand. She was crying, screaming, but no sound came out. Behind us stood the thing, tall, featureless, wearing my grandmother's skin like an overcoat stitched loosely around its limbs. It watched silently as the reflection me turned, lifted the girl, and carried her toward the trees. Then the real mirror cracked. Not from me, not from anything visible. It just broke. And my grandmother vanished. So did the clearing. And I was standing back in my house, at the front door, like I'd never left. Only now, something was different. The mirrors were back. All of them. I don't even own that many, but every room had one now. And every reflection showed him, standing just behind me, getting closer each time I looked. I don't know how many days passed after that. Time isn't real here anymore. The clocks tick backward. The calendar resets. The phone rings every morning with my voice on the line, whispering things I forget the moment I hang up. My thoughts are slipping. My face feels unfamiliar. Last night, I looked into the hallway mirror and saw him touching my shoulder, and I felt it, cold, thin, like bone under stretched skin. Tonight is the date carved into the door. I've boarded the windows, sealed the rooms, covered the mirrors again. But he's humming now. Not beneath the floorboards, not in the hall. Inside my head, he's almost here. And I think he's already started wearing me. It began again with the humming, just as it always did, soft, broken, and horribly childlike. But this time, it wasn't a lullaby bleeding in from behind the walls. This time, it came from inside my mouth. I woke up humming, not remembering starting, not even aware I was doing it until I caught my reflection mouthing the tune back to me, grinning slightly, like it had finally caught me in the act. And when I stopped and the reflection kept going. I punched the mirror. I couldn't take it anymore. Couldn't keep watching something wearing me like a costume, pretending to be surprised by my own horror. The glass shattered instantly, but the reflection didn't. It stayed there for a full breath longer than it should have. Still grinning. Still humming. Watching with those empty eyes that weren't mine anymore. The mirror stayed broken this time, but the humming didn't stop. If anything, it grew louder. There's something horrifying about losing trust in the surfaces around you. Every window a portal, every reflection a threat. I started catching glimpses in things that had no business showing a reflection. The silver of my spoon, the metal faucet, even the water in the toilet bowl. All of them blinked when I didn't. All of them smiled. I started avoiding anything that could shine. Covered what I could. Moved through the house like a bat in a cave. But it didn't matter. Because the thing wasn't trapped in the glass anymore. It had followed me out. And now it was learning how to walk. That night, the door with my name carved into it opened again. Not slowly. Not quietly. It swung open with the crack of splintering wood and an icy draft that extinguished every candle I had lit in the room. Darkness rolled in like a living thing, not just an absence of light but a presence. Thick and crawling, like smoke that stank of mold and meat left out in the sun. And then I saw them. Not just him, not just the thing wearing my grandmother's face and mine, but others, many others, lined up along the basement walls. Children, adults, elderly, all featureless, their faces blurred like smeared ink in rain, every one of them buzzing, vibrating like they were barely being held together, and all of them watching me. Then they started clapping, slow, out of sync, like broken puppets imitating joy, and I heard my grandmother's voice again, not from one place, but from everywhere. He's not here to take, he's here to replace. The thing stepped forward then, not a shadow anymore, not a shape. Me. It was perfect this time. My face, my voice, my mannerisms. It even wore the exact clothes I had on. A flawless twin. And it said something I'll never forget. Rest now. I'll live for both of us. I screamed, charged at it, knife in hand. But my body didn't move, because it already had. I was still at the bottom of the stairs, frozen. I could see myself walking up, could feel each step like a ghost riding the skin of someone else. And then I blinked. And I was him, looking down at myself, at the old version, the empty shell, the broken man who used to own this house, now reduced to a pile of trembling limbs, too scared to breathe. But it wasn't over, because the real terror hadn't begun. He turned around, the new me, and walked back upstairs, humming that tune, and for the first time I understood what it was. It wasn't a song. It was a ritual. A key. Every note was a lock turned. A gate opened. And with each line, he unhooked another chain holding back something even worse than him. Something still waiting. Back in the house, mirrors reappeared. Dozens, hundreds, every wall, every surface. All of them showing me, but not me, versions, variations, some weeping, some rotting. One was missing its jaw, yet it still mouthed the song. And the longer I watched, the more I realized they weren't showing the future or the past. They were options. Lives I could have lived, paths I didn't take, deaths I almost had. And in every one, he was there, watching, following, replacing. I clawed at my eyes. Anything to stop seeing. But you can't unsee something once it's in your head. I tried to leave again. Walked out the front door. This time the forest was gone. Now it was a town, my town. But off. The houses looked right, but none had doors. None had windows. Just painted on imitations like a movie set. The people? They moved in loops. A man watering a plant that wasn't there. A woman sweeping an already clean porch. A child skipping rope with no rope in hand. All of them humming, and none of them had faces. When I screamed, they stopped, one by one. They all turned toward me, and smiled with mouths that hadn't been there seconds ago. Then they pointed behind me. I turned, and there I was again. Only this version wasn't smiling. It wasn't even whole. Half of its head was missing. One eye dangled by a thread, its skin peeled like paper, but it moved confidently. Each step sure, each motion graceful. It raised one finger to its lips. "Shh," it said. Then everything went black. I woke up in my bed. Again, but this time there were chains around my wrists. Not metal. Not visible, but I felt them. Every time I tried to get up, the pressure around my arms tightened, dragging me back to the mattress. The walls pulsed now, like lungs, breathing me in. And then the door creaked open, and I stepped in. The new me, the perfect one, he smiled, sat at the edge of the bed, tilted his head like a concerned friend. "You're tired," he said, brushing hair from my face. "Let me help." I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. He leaned closer and whispered, "Your life wasn't being stolen. You offered it." The last thing I saw before the world faded again was my reflection in his eyes. Not scared, not broken, just empty. There's a truth about prisons that no one ever really talks about. It's not the bars, or the locks, or the guards that make them unbearable. It's the sameness, the stillness, the agonizing repetition of things you've already seen, already done, until the walls don't just contain you. They start becoming you. That's what the house is now. A prison with skin. A maze where time folds in on itself. A place where I am no longer the one walking the halls. I'm the one being walked through. I don't know how long I've been here now. Could be days. Could be weeks. I wake up in the same bed every time, but nothing else is the same. Sometimes the light outside is red, sometimes green. Sometimes there's no light at all, just a deep, humming blackness pressed against the windows like it's trying to seep in. The mirrors are back too, all of them, but they don't reflect anything anymore, just static, moving shapes. Sometimes screaming, sometimes laughing. Once, I stared into one for what I thought was a few seconds. When I blinked, my fingernails were gone. I don't remember removing them. The worst part isn't the fear anymore. It's the memory, because I can feel mine slipping. I wake up forgetting my name, my age, my face. I have to write it down now, all of it, over and over, in notebooks I hide under the floorboards. But even those pages are changing. I opened one yesterday and found it filled with symbols I couldn't read, written in a language that felt familiar, even though I've never seen it. And next to each line, a drawing of a face, not mine, but getting closer. Every day. And the humming, it never stops now. It comes from inside the house. The walls vibrate with it. The pipes shake. Sometimes, if I put my ear to the floor, I hear something breathing underneath. Slow, wet breaths. Big, hungry, waiting. And I know what it wants. It wants me gone. Or rather, it wants me to let go. To surrender fully. Because the truth is, it doesn't want my death. It wants my vacancy. I started testing the house, marking the door frames, counting steps between rooms, leaving items in specific places. But nothing holds. I can walk into the kitchen and come out in the attic. Open the front door and find myself in the bathroom mirror. I even found the basement again. Or something pretending to be it. And inside was a version of me I don't remember being. He sat in a rocking chair, humming. When I asked who he was, he smiled with bloody teeth and said, "I'm the one who said yes." I ran. Or tried to. But I didn't get far before the walls folded again and dropped me back into the bedroom. That night, I remembered something I shouldn't have. A conversation. A memory buried so deep I'd convinced myself it was a dream. I was 8. My grandmother had taken me into the forest behind the house. She led me to a small circle of stones, carved with strange marks, half buried in moss. She told me to sit in the center. Said it was for the ones who watch, that they needed to know me, that they'd keep me safe if I let them in. I remember being scared. I remember her whispering things in a language I didn't know, and I remember something whispering back. Now, that memory's surfacing like a bubble rising in tar, thick and hard to grasp. And I realize this didn't start with her death. It didn't start with the mirror, or the tapes, or the humming. It started with me. I opened the door before I even knew it existed. I said yes without knowing what the question was. And now they've come to collect. The thing that walks around during the day, the thing that wears my face, it's not pretending anymore. It reads my thoughts, recites them. Sometimes I hear it upstairs, reading pages from my notebooks in my voice, but with his cadence. Slower, emptier, like he's trying it on, like he's practicing. He eats food I don't remember cooking, leaves dishes I don't remember using, walks past me in the hall without a glance, as though I'm the ghost now. Maybe I am. Because last night I saw myself in the mirror again. But this time I was behind the glass. I pressed my palm to it. The version on the other side didn't move. He just watched. I whispered, "Let me out," and he shook his head. Then he whispered back, "You let me in." I punched the mirror again, shattered it. But it didn't break this time. It cracked, yes, split down the center, and something leaked out. Black, syrupy liquid. It smelled like burnt hair and rotting meat. It moved, crawled across the floor like it was alive. I tried to trap it under a bowl, but the bowl melted. Not cracked, melted, like wax under fire. And the liquid laughed. Not audibly, not with sound, but I felt it. A vibration in my teeth, in my bones. It was the same sensation I got when I first touched my grandmother's tapes. Like something deep inside me remembered this place. Remembered what I'd done. I think that's what the house is really. Not just a building, a memory trap. A place built to remember every choice, every mistake, every fear, and replay them until the person inside unravels and becomes nothing but a hollow shell. A mask for him. For them. Because there's more than one now. I hear them. At night, they gather in the hallway, just outside the door, whispering my name, singing lullabies I've never learned but somehow know. They scratch at the wood, not with claws, with fingernails, with hands that used to be mine. And they say things like, "Your time's up. Let go. You've seen what's behind the curtain. Now wear the costume." I don't know how many versions of me are trapped in this place, but I know I'm not the first. And I won't be the last. The house has its rhythm, its cycle. It finds someone curious, someone open, someone already fractured, and it invites them to remember. Because once you remember, really remember, you can't unsee the truth. This house isn't haunted. It is the ghost, a living entity stitched together with regrets and reflections, mirrors and memories. And I fed it with my fear, with my questions, with every crack in my soul that begged to be filled. And now I'm one more echo in its walls. I still walk the halls, still write in my notebook, still pretend I can leave. But I see the signs now, the faces in the wallpaper, the way the photographs rearrange when I blink, the names on the basement door changing every night. Last night, it said mine. Tonight, it says yours. It happened again. I woke up someplace I've never seen, and yet, somehow, I knew exactly where I was. A room carved in my mind but never in my memory. The walls were the same soft, rotting gray as the sky I'd seen outside. The ceiling drooped with moisture, and every corner seemed to pulse like a heartbeat too faint to count. I sat up in the bed. Not my bed. Not any bed I remembered. And all four walls groaned as if they felt it. That was the first time I realized something had changed. The house wasn't hiding from me anymore. It was watching. No, not just watching. Waiting. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became this house had never needed to trick me, never needed to force me. It just waited for me to slip, to question, to wander, to look. Because every time I tried to fix what was happening, Every time I scratched at the edges of reality looking for seams, I gave it more to work with, more pieces of me to mirror, more habits to mimic, more voice to steal. Because now, the voices weren't just around me. They were mine. I stood and turned toward the mirror that sat at the foot of the strange bed. The one mirror I hadn't covered. But this one didn't reflect me. It showed the bedroom I used to sleep in. The real one. And in the bed, the old, worn bed that once belonged to my grandmother, lay me. My face, my chest rising and falling, my lips slightly parted, mouthing something silent. Behind the bed, a figure watched. Not a shadow anymore, but shaped, like clay molded into a person but never finished. No eyes, no mouth, just indentations where they should be. Its body moved in spasms, like a bad puppet forced to dance. It bent close to my sleeping self and whispered something, and I heard it, not through the mirror, in my ear. I turned, violently, expecting something to be behind me, but there was nothing. Then I heard the voice again, and this time, it wasn't whispering. It was mimicking. My voice. The exact way I breathe, the way my throat catches at the end of a sentence. And it was calling someone's name, only I couldn't remember who. The name was right there, on the edge of thought. But every time I reached for it, something slipped, like a greasy thread pulled from my mind, taking pieces with it. I started writing again, scratching into the walls this time. No paper, no pen, just my fingernails. Remember bo houare, I wrote over and over, because even that was starting to fade. My memories were being replaced. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see a life I never lived. A birthday party where I don't recognize the guests. A school hallway I've never walked through. A funeral. My own, I think. With no casket, just a mirror at the altar, and rows of people staring at their reflections, sobbing. This isn't just memory loss. This is replacement. He's swapping them out. He's becoming me faster than I'm fading. I can hear him practicing again now. He walks the halls during the day, talks to the mirrors at night. Sometimes he laughs, and it sounds almost right, but not quite. The laugh is off by a half second, like a recording just barely misaligned. Like the real sound is still trying to sync with the body. But he's getting better, so much better. And worse, others are copying him now. They gather outside the house. I didn't see them at first. I heard them, like wind against the walls. But one night, I opened the curtain and saw them. Dozens of figures standing in the yard. Identical silhouettes, all with my posture. My head tilt, my limp, and they were all facing the house, just standing in the fog, mouths open, no sound. Then one of them spoke. My voice. Surrender. You've already started. I threw the curtain shut and screamed. Not out of fear. I was long past fear. I screamed because I recognized the one who spoke. I remembered that exact version of me. That tone. That look. That was the version of me who sat in the basement 2 nights ago, rocking in a chair and humming to the darkness. That was me. Another copy. Another memory discarded by the house and left to rot in the yard with the others. And now they want me to join them. The next day, I found something on the kitchen table. A note, written in my handwriting. But the ink was too clean. The paper too new. It read, "Don't resist. You're only making it uglier." There was no signature. There didn't need to be. I wrote it. Or rather, he did. The imposter. The echo. The thing that wears me like an outfit he hasn't quite grown into. And now I'm left wondering what happens when he does fit. Will I just stop? Will I vanish? Or worse, will I wake up in his place? I tried to escape again. You'd think I'd learn. But desperation has no memory. I ran through every room, trying every door, screaming names I no longer remember the meaning of. And then I heard it. Not humming. Not whispering. Weeping. Soft, childlike sobs, coming from the attic. I don't know what made me go up there. Hope, maybe. Or the last ember of a soul not yet eaten. I climbed the narrow stairs, each one bending like wet wood under my weight. At the top, the door stood open. Inside, lit by a single swinging bulb, sat a small boy in the corner, crying. I stepped in carefully. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just turned around, and it was me, 8 years old, eyes hollow, mouth stitched, crying blood down cracked cheeks, and behind him another mirror. I didn't walk to it. It pulled me. And as I drew close, I saw something that broke whatever was left of me. The reflection was the house. From outside, and inside each window was a version of me. Hundreds, thousands, each trapped, each screaming, each trying to claw their way back into one single body. Mine. But I can't hold them. Not forever. The walls are thinning, the copies are strengthening, and I think tomorrow I won't be the one writing. Tomorrow he will. There's a moment just before sleep, that fragile dip between waking and dreaming, when the mind loosens its grip on what's real. That's when the house gets closest. That's when the voices crawl through the cracks in your thoughts. I tried not to sleep. I swore I wouldn't. I barricaded the door, took cold showers, scratched words into my skin just to feel something. But exhaustion doesn't ask for permission. It drags you. And when I finally collapsed, it wasn't into sleep. It was into him. I don't remember closing my eyes, but I remember opening them. And I was somewhere familiar. Not the house, not exactly, but something wearing its bones. Like a dream of the house, sketched by someone who'd only heard it described in nightmares. The angles were wrong, the doors too tall. The floor curved inward like I was standing in the throat of a giant. Every sound echoed twice. Once from the walls, and once from behind my teeth, like the house was echoing through me. There were no mirrors in this version, just windows, hundreds of them, all fogged, all humming, and behind each one a face, mine, all different. One bleeding from the eyes, one smiling without lips, one mouthing words I didn't recognize but understood. They didn't blink, didn't flinch, just watched. I turned, and the hallway behind me moved. Not the walls, the hallway itself, stretching and pulsing like a throat preparing to swallow. And I knew I wasn't just in a place. I was inside him. Inside the thing that had been waiting behind every reflection. The one my grandmother whispered about. The one that had been trying me on like a coat for years. He didn't just want me. He was made from me. That's when I heard them. The mouths. All around me. Whispering from the wood, from the floor, from the ceiling beams. They weren't speaking any language I knew, but I understood every word like they'd been buried deep in my brain since birth. And their mouths weren't just voices. They were wounds, torn openings in the walls, breathing in the dark. One whispered, "You're the last." Another, "He fits now." Another, "We were almost enough, but you made him whole." Then I saw him. He stood at the end of the hall, still wearing my face, but something had changed. He didn't mimic anymore. He inhabited. The posture was perfect, the breathing timed. The subtle frown I always made when I thought too hard. Even that, he didn't just look like me. He looked comfortable. Like he'd been wearing me for years, and I was only now realizing it. He raised a hand and said, "You're welcome to stay. You've built such a beautiful shell." I tried to speak, but my throat was thick, sticky, like the words had been pulled out while I slept and replaced with silence. He stepped closer. "You called me, remember? All those years ago in the forest. The stones. Your grandmother said the words, but you wanted to know. You opened the door. You asked the question. And I answered. I shook my head, backing away, but the hallway closed. The walls pressed in like lungs exhaling. He didn't walk, he flowed. One blink, he was 20 feet away. Next blink, 5. Then 1. Then right in front of me. And I saw it, a seam, behind his ear, faint, but there. I reached for it without thinking. My fingers passed through flesh that wasn't flesh, like warm fog in the shape of skin. And under it, layers. Layers of faces, each one stacked like thin paper, each one with eyes closed, waiting. My face was only the topmost layer now. The others, I recognized them. The contractor who visited once and never returned. The missing children. My grandmother. Every soul the house had devoured, all tucked neatly beneath the current mask. Faces he could wear again if needed. 100 empty mouths behind a borrowed smile. And now I knew the truth. He didn't steal identities. He collected them. I ran. Through walls that weren't walls. Through staircases that looped like knots. Each door I opened took me deeper inside. Not inside the house. Inside him. The deeper I went, the more memories weren't mine. I saw through his eyes. Felt his hands. I watched through mirrors as he sat at my table, wrote in my notebooks, answered phone calls from people who thought I was still alive. He was living me, and I was becoming the dream, the afterimage, the echo. I woke screaming, back in the real house, or at least what it pretended to be. My bed soaked in sweat. The mirror across the room fogged up, even though the air was still. And there, drawn in condensation, was a single phrase: "You look better on me." My voice, my handwriting. But I hadn't moved. I smashed that mirror too. It didn't matter anymore. I could destroy them all, but they'd come back. He'd come back. Because he was me now. And I was only the memory he left behind. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. The writing fades from the walls no matter how many times I scratch it in. The whispers are louder now. My voice speaks to me from other rooms, asking me if I'm tired yet, if I'm ready to rest. But I'm not yet. Because if I rest, I forget. And if I forget, he wins. So I'll keep writing, keep carving, keep screaming into every mirror until I find the one that still reflects me. Because there has to be a way back. Even if I'm the only one left who believes it. Even if every other face is already taken. Even if I have to crawl through 1,000 echoes of myself, I won't give him all of me. Not yet. You'd think you'd know when you're no longer alone inside your own body. That you'd feel the shift, the intrusion, like a sudden chill in the bones, or a heartbeat out of rhythm. But it doesn't happen like that. It's slow. So slow that by the time you realize something has changed, you've already been changed. Not taken, not stolen, just rewritten. One tiny memory at a time. This morning I looked in the mirror and called myself by a name I don't recognize. Not just once. I said it like it was normal. I smiled at myself with a kind of familiarity that chilled me to the marrow, and for a moment, I didn't feel like I was looking at myself. I felt like I was watching someone else look at me. And that's when I noticed the reflection's smile lingered half a second longer than mine. It was subtle. So subtle I could have blinked and missed it. But I didn't. And now that I'd noticed it once, I kept noticing it everywhere. In the mirror on the medicine cabinet, in the polished surface of the oven, even in the water pooled in the sink, my reflection lagged. Slightly, like it was listening, waiting, memorizing. And I realized something that made my stomach knot with a horror too cold to scream. It wasn't trying to be me anymore. It already was. What was in the glass was what the world saw now. The real me was starting to flicker. And he, the thing behind the glass, was becoming more solid. Every time I tried to write, my hands wouldn't cooperate. I'd scribble the same words over and over, and by the time I finished, the ink would rearrange itself. I'd blink and my handwriting was no longer mine. It was cleaner, neater, precise, not rushed and desperate, but elegant. It was his. He was polishing my edges. I screamed into the mirror that night, slammed my fists into it, bloodied my knuckles until the reflection smiled with red teeth and whispered a word I wish I could forget. It whispered soon. After that, the world began bleeding. Not metaphorically, literally. The walls would sweat a thin, dark fluid that smelled like wet rust and ash. My clothes would dry themselves, then wrinkle again in the exact same pattern. As though the house was stuck in a loop, even the clocks lost their meaning. I watched one count up to 274. Another ran backwards. One spun so fast its hands broke free and dropped to the floor like dead insects. I tried again to find the front door. It wasn't there. In its place was a mirror, and in the reflection someone else was trying to get in. A woman. Thin, pale, knocking silently. Her lips were moving, begging. I tried to open it, to scream at her not to come in, not to fall into the same trap I had, but there was no sound. Then she looked directly at me, not my reflection. Me, and her mouth froze into a perfect O. She recognized me. That's when the reflection changed. She was gone. In her place was him, still smiling, still mine. He pressed his hand to the glass, and I felt pressure against my chest, like he was pushing through. That night the whispers returned, but now they weren't just random. They were names. My names. Not just the one I go by now, but every name I've ever been called. Childhood nicknames. Forgotten usernames. Even names I'd never spoken aloud. Things I'd written once in secret journals as a teenager. Dark names, angry ones. He knew them all, and he whispered them like a chant. A hymn made from the thread of my identity. When I tried to plug my ears, the whispers came from inside my skull, like echoes trapped in bone. I spent that night trying to destroy every reflective surface. The mirrors, the doorknobs, even the black screen of the TV. But each time I shattered one, another appeared. Sometimes 5, sometimes in places that made no sense at all. The side of a cereal box, a picture frame that never had glass, even the gleam off a nail hammered into the wall. He was multiplying. Worse, he was learning how to twist the house. It had always been a labyrinth, yes, but now it was different, responsive. Living. I'd open a door expecting a bathroom and find a closet full of versions of my own clothes. But they were blood-stained, torn, burned, as if each outfit had been worn to death. 1,000 deaths, some by fire, some by blade, some by hanging. I slammed the door shut, opened another. Found myself looking into my childhood bedroom, but it wasn't right. The wallpaper was peeling in patterns shaped like teeth. The ceiling was too low. My old stuffed animals sat in a circle on the floor, facing inward, surrounding a single cracked mirror. And in the mirror, a version of me, age 10, throat slit ear to ear, smiling. I backed away, heart in my throat. The house shifted. The hallway behind me was gone. The floor stretched. I stumbled and fell into the next room, the attic. But this attic was a cathedral now. High ceilings, dozens of mirrors, suspended in midair by chains that pulsed like veins. Each mirror showed a different version of my life. In one, I lived with my grandmother longer. In another, I never moved in at all. In one, I died young, drowned. In another, I became him willingly. And in the center, suspended like a trophy in a frame of bones, was a mirror showing me now. But my reflection was weeping blood, and the caption carved in the glass said, "The original." That's what I am now, the prototype. And he's the perfected version. He doesn't just want to copy me. He wants to replace the source. So completely that I become a fading legend, a blurry whisper in a mirror, something children see once and forget. He wants to make me never have existed. So I started leaving messages. Not just for myself anymore, for anyone. I carved them into the walls with rusted nails. I wrote them on the soles of shoes I found in closets filled with duplicates. I whispered them into the humming tune he left in the walls, hiding syllables in between the notes like buried bones. And here's the message: if you ever find yourself in a house like mine, don't answer your reflection. Not even by accident. Not a glance. Not a mimic. Because it's waiting for you to recognize it. And once you do, it becomes you. I found another version of myself today. This one was hanging upside down in the stairwell, skin paper, thin, eyes missing. It was whispering my grandmother's lullaby through a mouth filled with teeth that weren't human. It didn't speak. It just watched. As if watching me remember it was its entire purpose. I'm beginning to suspect there's not one he, that this thing, whatever it is, doesn't have a name because names are human. And this is older. Older than the house. Older than the forest. Maybe older than memory itself. a predator of identity. And mirrors, they're just doorways. Eyes it can see through, mouths it can whisper from. Sometimes I think the mirrors were never meant for us, that they're not for reflection at all. They're storage. Catalogs, holding pens for souls, and mine's almost full. I've been coughing up black strings in the mornings. Hair, I think, but not mine. Too coarse, too long, too gray. My fingernails have started to fall out again, only this time they regrow within hours. But different. Cleaner, shinier, like replacements, like parts. And my voice, I recorded myself yesterday, just to hear it, just to remember. And what played back was him, speaking in my voice, but not my words. He said, I am the echo now. I ring louder than you. So I screamed. I screamed until my throat bled, until I passed out. And when I woke up, I was lying in the hallway, surrounded by mirrors, each one cracked, each one showing a different emotion. Joy, grief, rage, despair. But none of them were mine. They were being tried on, sampled, fitted. He's choosing the final mask. Soon, he won't need me. Soon, I'll be one more mouth humming in the walls. And when he walks into the world wearing me, no one will ever know the difference. Unless I can leave a scar, some kind of mark he can't hide, some horror he'll carry with him. So someone, anyone, might look into his eyes one day and realize that's not him. That's not real. That's not me. But time's running thin. The final mirror is almost whole. I can see it rebuilding in the living room, shard by shard. It breathes. It waits. It remembers. And tonight, he speaks my name in every room. Not like a thief. Not like a ghost. But like he owns it. It happened the way a bruise spreads. Slow at first, then all at once. I didn't notice it in the beginning. The subtle differences. The things he said in my voice. The way he moved. The details so small you could almost forgive them. Almost. The way he paused 1 second too long before answering the phone. The way he held a fork with his fingers too close to the base. The slight, wrong rhythm in his laugh. At first they were barely anything. A trick of memory, fatigue, a glitch. But that's the lie he builds. That you can dismiss what you see until what's left isn't yours anymore. By the time you realize the reflection is living better than you are, it's already greeted your friends, made your coffee, learned your signature, and worse, it's improving you. He's a more likable version of me. Kinder, neater, wakes up early, doesn't forget birthdays. And that makes him dangerous. Because when he slips into my life for good, no one will ever question it. Why would they? He's me, without the jagged edges. But I remember the jagged edges. I remember the parts I shouldn't. Because he left them behind like breadcrumbs. Not out of carelessness, but as if he wanted me to follow. As if part of the game is showing me how easy it was for him to replace me. The first breadcrumb was the letter, handwritten, left on the table, signed with my name. Only I didn't write it. You should rest now, it said. You've done enough. But the way the letters curved, the spacing between the words, it was perfect. Like someone had studied my handwriting under a microscope and then corrected it. Removed the imperfections. The human flaws. And something about that shook me deeper than any whisper, deeper than any shadow on the wall. Because that letter, it belonged to me. It was mine, but it wasn't. And the worst part, it said what I'd been too afraid to say out loud. I was tired. So tired the house knew it. He knew it. They fed off it. That night I heard my own voice from the other side of the bedroom door. He was talking to someone. I crept forward, pressed my ear to the wood.
Yeah.
I'm fine, he said. Pause. Just adjusting. Takes time, pause. They suspect nothing. Not yet. I opened the door. He was gone. The room was empty. No lights. No sound. Just the shape of me, reflected in the window, not moving. And for a moment, I thought, maybe that's me. Maybe I'm still standing at the door. But when I moved, the reflection didn't. It just watched. Then smiled. And whispered, don't interrupt. I smashed the glass. Again. It didn't matter. By now I had smashed more mirrors than I could count. Every time I destroyed one, another took its place. They multiplied like bacteria, like a plague. You wipe out one colony, and another blooms somewhere darker. They even started appearing in non-reflective surfaces. The TV screen, a puddle on the floor, the hollow of a doorknob. Each one a version of him, each one learning more, each one a closer. The second breadcrumb was my journal. I found it in the crawl space, covered in dust that wasn't dust, but ash, like the paper had been burned and then reassembled. Every page had been rewritten, line by line, my words, my voice, my handwriting, but the thoughts, twisted, smoothed over, as if he'd taken my darkest memories and edited them into something cleaner, palatable, false. One entry stood out, dated 3 days ago. It read, "Today, I stopped resisting. It feels good to let go. I'm better now." I didn't write that. I never wrote that. But the ink was mine, the pen was mine, the skin flaking off the page, mine. He was inside me now, not as a spirit, not as a demon, as muscle memory, as habit, as a second thought that finishes your first. You say, I should go to sleep, and something inside adds, yes, rest. I'll keep watch. He waits for your surrender. Not a scream, just a sigh. The house, of course, has changed too. It's grown quieter, less reactive, like it's settled, like it knows the outcome. The walls don't groan anymore. The pipes don't hum. The mirrors don't crack on their own. They're waiting now, as if the final act has been written and they're just watching it unfold. But I'm not going quietly, because he made one mistake. He left the third breadcrumb the name. I found it in the back of a drawer, etched into the wood under the false bottom. Not my name, not his. The first one, the name whispered during the rituals. The name I heard my grandmother mutter when she thought I was asleep. The one hidden in lullabies. The name I'd always known but never dared to speak out loud. Vizeth. I don't know what it means, but I know what it does. When I said it, the house shivered, not a tremble, a full body quake. Paint peeled from the walls. Light bulbs flickered and died. A scream rose from the floorboards. Not one voice, but thousands, all of them using my throat. And in the mirror, every version of me opened its mouth and screamed too, faces melting into one another. I'd hit something. Vizeth isn't a name. It's a binding. A command. A curse. He felt it too. Later that night, I caught him in the hallway reflected in the mirror. He wasn't watching me this time. He was curled against the wall, shaking, his form unstable, flickering between faces. One moment my grandmother, the next my 10-year-old self. Then a child I didn't recognize, then just blackness. Then me again, sweating, sobbing. He looked up at the mirror and said, he remembers. Then he vanished. I have power now. Not enough to win, but enough to hurt him. And hurting him means there's still a line between us. A wall he hasn't fully crossed. He needs me alive to wear me. But if I break that line, if I sever the link, I can trap him. I just don't know where. Because the house belongs to him now. Every wall is his skin. Every mirror his eye. Every whisper his voice. I can't leave. But I can go deeper. There's one door I've never opened. Not the basement. Not the attic. Beneath the stairs, hidden behind years of drywall and rot, there's a panel I once thought was just water damage. But it isn't. Behind it, there's a staircase that goes down. I only found it because the reflection didn't follow me there. It stayed upstairs, watching, but nervous. I saw it. For the first time, it looked uncertain. So that's where I'm going. I don't expect to come back. But I have to try. Because if I don't, there won't be anything left to come back to. I'm writing this now, just in case. If you find these words, and you feel something watching you through the mirror, do not acknowledge it. Do not respond. Do not speak. Do not look for too long, because it's looking for cracks. And if you give it a name, it gives you a grave. He's waiting. I feel him breathing in the floor, mouthing my name from the pipes, knocking from the inside of every closed cabinet. He wears me better than I wear myself. But I still remember who I am. And that's the only weapon I have left. I'm going into the staircase now. Deeper than the foundation. Deeper than the house was ever supposed to go. If I make it to the bottom, I'll call the name again. Louder. This time, I won't let it echo. This time, I'll let it break. I stood at the edge of the hidden staircase, staring down into a throat of blackness so thick it felt alive. The air around the opening didn't move, but it pressed, like something dense and ancient was coiled just beneath the surface, waiting for me to take that first step. I hesitated, not because I was afraid. That ship had sailed long ago, but because the silence that surrounded the hole felt like a challenge. A dare. One that whispered in a voice that almost matched mine, "You can't come back from this." I went anyway. Each step creaked beneath me, but not the way wood should. It wasn't a sound made from pressure. It was made from recognition. The stairs knew me. With every footfall, I felt them respond, warming under my soles, softening slightly as if to welcome me deeper. I counted them, not because I thought it would help me find my way back, but because it gave my mind something to hold on to. 37 steps down, the air changed. It became wet. Not humid, wet. The walls began to weep a slow, thick ooze that smelled like old milk and rusted iron. I touched it without thinking, and it clung to my fingers, refusing to drip. And when I wiped it on my jeans, the stain didn't soak in. It moved. It watched. I stopped wiping and kept going. At the 53rd step, I found the first set of carvings. Symbols etched deep into the wall. Shallow grooves worn by thousands of identical strokes. Names, not words. Names that clawed at my tongue when I tried to read them. Some scratched so violently that the surrounding wood had splintered. One I recognized immediately, Vazeth. The name I'd spoken aloud upstairs. The name that made the walls tremble. This time it was written in a circle, surrounded by other marks. Ones I didn't know, but could feel. It was a binding circle, a prison. And I realized then this staircase didn't lead to a basement. It led to a tomb. Not a place where something had died, but where something had been buried alive. Step by step, I felt it waking beneath me. My thoughts grew louder, sharper. My memories surged, boiling to the surface uninvited. Old faces, first kisses. The way my grandmother used to stir her tea 3 times counterclockwise. And underneath all of it, his voice. Not whispering anymore. Not mocking. Begging. He didn't want me to go any further. Because this was the one place he couldn't follow. The one place the house didn't fully belong to him. It belonged to what came before. At the bottom of the stairs was a door. No handle. Just flesh. Skin stretched over bone. It pulsed when I touched it like a heart fighting sleep. I placed my palm against the center and spoke the name again. Vizeth. The skin peeled away, folding back on itself, exposing a frame made of blackened wood and rusted iron nails bent in unnatural angles. I stepped through, and I saw it. Not him. Not the one wearing me. The original. It didn't have a shape. Not really. Just suggestion. Formless weight pressed into the corners of the room like an enormous animal too large to see all at once. 1,000 mouths moved along the walls, whispering things I had almost forgotten. Lullabies, warnings, the sound of my mother's voice when she said goodbye for the last time. They were memories. Mine, stolen from me one by one and stored here where he could feed off them. And in the center, a mirror. Not cracked, not fogged. Perfect. A hole in reality, smooth and liquid, held in place by hooks that dug into the ground and ceiling. And behind it, I saw him. The final version, wearing me like a tailored suit, sitting at my table, drinking from my cup, answering a call from someone I once loved, laughing in a voice that no longer belonged to me. And next to him, another reflection, still growing, still learning, a new face, someone else, someone next. I dropped to my knees, because I understood now. This wasn't about me. It never was. I wasn't the first. I wasn't even unique. I was a stepping stone, a temporary mask, a placeholder while the thing refined itself, grew stronger, smarter, more human. Each identity better than the last. Each stolen life more convincing. Until the original version becomes obsolete, forgotten, discarded like skin after a molt. And now that he'd perfected me, he was already moving on. The only thing left for me was this room. This womb of mirrors and mouths. But then something shifted. The mirror rippled. And for the first time since I stepped foot into the house, I saw his face break. Not physically. Emotionally, he was surprised. I had come too far. I stood. I spoke the name again. But this time, I didn't whisper it. I roared it.
Varsitich!
And the room reacted. The walls screamed. The mouths began weeping black fluid. The mirror fractured, not from outside, but from within. And he clutched his chest, staggering. I watched through the glass as he fell to his knees, gasping. The phone dropped from his hand. The illusion flickered. For a split second, I saw not myself, but all the versions behind him. Faces blending, lives merging. The entire tapestry of stolen existence crumbling. He was trying to hold them together. But I had cracked the root. He looked up, not with anger, with fear, because now I knew the truth. The name wasn't just a command, it was a key, a word older than language, buried in the bloodline of those who touched this house. My grandmother hadn't spoken it out of desperation. She'd spoken it as a last line of defense, a fail-safe, a final lock to hold the door shut, and now I was the one holding the key. But it wasn't enough to say it. I had to give it form. I stepped toward the mirror, laid my hands on the glass, felt the pull, sharp, endless, greedy. My reflection screamed at me not to do it. You'll be trapped, it said. You'll be erased. Maybe. But someone had to close the loop, so I leaned in and whispered the name one last time. The mirror shattered inward. The weight hit me like a wave. Cold, aching, eternal. My vision tunneled. My ears filled with a roaring like wind tearing through a cathedral. And then I saw everything, every face, every theft, every voice used like a puppet string. I saw my grandmother's eyes as she carved symbols into the attic wall. I saw the boy in the woods who went missing in 1982. I saw the contractor, the neighbor, the child in the attic, all of them. Their final thoughts, final screams, final echoes, and I held them. Just long enough. Then I let them go. All of them. And the mirror collapsed into nothing. When I woke up, I was alone. The house was still, quiet, no humming, no whispers, no reflections, just me, my hands, my thoughts, my name. I don't know if I won. I don't know if he is gone. But I know this when I looked into the hallway mirror this morning. It blinked when I did, and it hasn't smiled since. There's a quiet that comes after terror. Not peace, not relief, just a wait. Like the moment after a scream, when your throat's torn raw, and you're not sure if the silence is because you stopped or because something took the sound away. That's what I felt when I woke up. The house didn't creak. The mirrors didn't hum. No footsteps above, no whispers beneath the floorboards. It was as if the walls were holding their breath. As if the house had gone still, not because it was over, but because it was waiting to see what I would do next. I stayed on the floor for hours. Could have been minutes, could have been a day. Time no longer ran forward in here. It spun, folded, reversed. I pressed my palm to the wood and felt warmth, real warmth, for the first time in what felt like weeks. Not the clammy, rotten heat of the breathing walls, but something familiar. Human. Alive. It tricked me. For a heartbeat, I let myself believe it was over. That the mirror had shattered completely. That I had locked him away for good in whatever formless place the house had been hiding him. That I had survived. But the house doesn't end. It pauses, it shifts, and sometimes it pretends to be asleep. The first sign came when I saw the photograph, taped to the fridge. One I didn't put there. It was a picture of me, standing outside, shirt stained with paint, smiling like I had no idea what was behind me, because I didn't. In the photo, behind my shoulder, barely visible through the frame of the window, was him. No face, just the shape, watching. But this photo wasn't from before. It wasn't old. It was new. And I knew it was new because in the corner of the shot, on the table, was a broken mug I shattered the night before in a fit of rage. The pieces were still in the trash. He had taken a picture of me and put it in the kitchen, like a trophy, like a warning. The silence stopped feeling like peace after that. It felt like bait. So I started testing the house again, and that's when I noticed the reflections weren't gone. They were just still. Every mirror showed me, yes, my face, my movements, but not exactly. They followed with a delay, subtle at first, then longer, a blink behind, a breath late. The reflection would raise its hand a few seconds after I did, turn its head with a lag so unnatural it made my spine lock. They were studying me, learning again, rebuilding. He hadn't been destroyed, he'd been reset, and this time he wasn't doing it alone. At night, I heard them, faint at first, distant, then clearer, closer, not voices, breaths, multiple, some fast, some slow, some wheezing, some not human. I turned all the mirrors to the wall, covered them in blankets, tore them down. But the breaths didn't stop. They followed me. I'd lie in bed and feel them on my neck, hot, cold, wet. Once, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, and something exhaled behind it. The sound of lungs that hadn't worked in decades forcing air through a throat no longer made of flesh. The next morning, I found fingerprints on the inside of the mirror I had smashed days earlier. Not bloody, not greasy, just present. 5 long streaks, like someone had rested their hand there, watching me sleep. And in the center, a single word written in dust almost. I started to change after that, subtly. The way sickness creeps in before the fever spikes, I'd forget where I was mid-sentence, speak a word that wasn't mine, glimpse movement in the corner of my vision, only to find nothing but my own shadow trailing behind me. But the shadow would linger. Once, I walked past the mirror in the hallway and saw something different. It wasn't my reflection. It wasn't his either. It was someone between, a figure still forming, the same height, same build, but no face, just a blank. And in the corner of the mirror, etched in the glass, were tally marks. 23. I didn't understand at first, not until I counted how many mirrors were in the house. 22. One was missing. And that one was me. I was the last reflection. I wasn't the survivor. I was the final layer. The one he hadn't fully carved. The one he was still shaping. And once he finished molding my fears, perfecting my expressions, harvesting every last flicker of who I had been, he'd wear me like he had the others. But this time, it wouldn't just be in here. This time, he'd step outside. He'd walk out in my body with my voice, wearing my memories like jewelry, laughing with my friends, living in my house, answering the door with my smile, and no one would ever know, because I'd still be here, trapped, echoing, just another hum behind the mirror, another mouth mouthing the lullaby, another breath in the walls. That's what the house does. It doesn't just haunt, it hosts, it collects, it curates a perfect version of you, cleansed of fear, trauma, failure, leaves the broken parts behind, leaves you behind. That's what Vaseth is. Not a name, not a demon, an archivist, a keeper of souls, a gatherer of masks, and I am the last shelf to be filled, unless I break the house itself. So I've stopped trying to escape. Escape isn't freedom, it's permission. Instead, I listen now. I follow the breaths. I map the mirrors. I track the pulse of the walls. Because every structure has a heart, a source, something that keeps it beating. And if I find it, I can stop it. I can end the cycle, not just for me, for all of us. The contractor, the children, my grandmother. The hundreds of mouths I hear singing to each other in the vents at night. The next time I hear them harmonize, I won't cover my ears. I'll join. I'll match their notes. And when he listens, when Vaseth listens, I'll speak a word he never expected. Not his name. Mine. Because I still remember it. And he doesn't own it. Not yet. The house was quieter than it had ever been, but not the kind of quiet that brings peace. It was the stillness of something calculating, something listening, waiting behind plaster and wood, just past the reach of my voice. I began to notice that whenever I spoke aloud, even to myself, the walls breathed. Not a groan, not a creak, a breath. A slow inhale through vents that hadn't worked in years. Like lungs had formed behind the drywall and were learning how to sync with mine. And when I went silent, they held that breath. Anticipating. Studying. Always just a beat behind me, mimicking the rhythm of my life. And still, the mirrors multiplied. There were new ones now. Shards inside picture frames. Sleevers in the cracked tiles of the bathroom floor. Even in the shine of a spoon I hadn't touched since this all began. I caught him watching me again. He didn't flinch anymore. He didn't smile. He just stared, patient and cruel. He knew I was nearing the edge. He knew what I was starting to understand. That the house didn't trap me because it needed to. It invited me. I was the one who never left. It sounds ridiculous now. That I thought I could just push him out, scream his name loud enough, smash a few mirrors and win. But that was before I found the room in the floor. The place even the mirrors refused to follow me into. It started with a thud beneath the living room, a heartbeat in the floorboards. Just once, then again, louder the third time. I dropped to my knees and pressed my ear against the wood, and that's when I heard it something knocking back. Not asking for help, asking for entry. I didn't want to answer it. Every instinct screamed that some doors aren't meant to be opened. But curiosity is its own poison. It's subtle and slow, and by the time you realize it's spread, you're already reaching for the handle. I pried up the floorboards, and underneath was a hatch. No hinges, no lock, just a square of wood, embedded flush with the frame, covered in soot, black fingerprints. And when I pulled it open, the breath of the house escaped in a single exhale that smelled like ash, mold, and old grief. I climbed down. The ladder led into a chamber that should not have existed. Too deep, too cold, too wide. There was no foundation like this. No records. I knew because I'd checked the blueprints. This space was outside time. A wound in the memory of the house, and it pulsed. It pulsed with sound, not music, not hums, but words. Hundreds. Layered over each other. Every version of my voice I'd ever used. Every lie I'd ever told. Every whisper. Every time I muttered to myself when no one was around. They echoed off the stone walls. And there, in the center of the room, was the breach. It looked like a mirror. But it wasn't. It wasn't glass. It wasn't a surface. It was a hole in the world. A fluid shape, hovering, like the reflection of something that didn't exist. And within it, I saw him. But this time, he wasn't alone. He stood among others, a circle of figures, every one wearing a different face. Some were mine, some I didn't know. One looked like my grandmother, eyes hollowed into caverns, mouth stitched with black thread that moved when the others spoke. And they were speaking, not to each other, to me. Return. Release, relinquish. They said it over and over, voices like the memory of screams soaked in honey. The command behind the words was soft, but that only made it more dangerous. I should have fled. Instead, I stepped closer. The hole shimmered. It grew colder. I could see my breath, but I couldn't feel my body. Every inch of me tingled with the sensation of being watched from within. And in that moment, I understood something terrible. He wasn't just using the house to build himself. He was using me to breach the walls between this world and whatever he came from. I wasn't the victim. I was the door. That's why he hadn't consumed me entirely yet. That's why the mirrors still mimicked instead of overtook. I was the final step, the last vessel he needed to fully arrive. If I gave in, even once, if I allowed the reflection to match me completely, If I mirrored him back with enough precision, he would pass through me. Not to steal my life, but to become real. Permanently. And what came with him, I didn't want to know. I backed away from the breach. Ran. Climbed the ladder 2 rungs at a time. Slammed the hatch shut. Nailed the boards back over it with my bare hands, cutting myself open in the process. But even as I bled, even as the pulse beneath the floor fell back into silence, I knew I was too late. Because when I looked up from the stained wood, there was a mirror on the wall that hadn't been there before. No frame, no glass, just my reflection smiling. It blinked before I did. It raised its hand before I moved. It wasn't mimicking anymore. It was leading, and behind it I saw the breach, growing wider, stretching. The words repeated again, but this time in my voice relinquish, and something inside me answered, not with words, with a feeling, with permission. It was small, but it was there. A thread of doubt, a fracture in my resistance. Just a breath, just a moment of exhaustion, of grief, of wanting it to stop. That was all he needed. Because now he speaks in more than whispers. Now he speaks through the walls, through the house, through me. I feel him in my hands when I reach for a doorknob, in my eyes when I blink too slowly, in my thoughts when I trail off mid-sentence, forgetting where I was going. He's in. The breach didn't have to open wide. It only needed a crack, and now I carry it. Every room I walk through warps behind me. The house adjusts to fit his shape. The rooms rearrange themselves without sound. One hallway leads to 5 others. Mirrors turn toward me like sunflowers chasing light. I am the infection now. Not just infected, I am the carrier. And I know what happens next. He's going to step through me. Use my body like a first breath. Wear my voice like his own heartbeat. And then he'll move. To the next house, the next name, the next open door. Unless I stop him. Unless I end this here. That means destroying more than the breach. It means destroying myself. And maybe that's the only way to shut the door. Maybe that's why I'm writing this, not for escape, but as a warning. Because if you find this, if you feel watched, if you see a mirror that doesn't belong, don't smile. Don't blink. And whatever you do, don't answer your name, because it might not be calling for you. It might just be wearing your voice, waiting to see if it still fits. I haven't spoken my name in days, maybe longer. I don't know what day it is anymore, and even if I did, it wouldn't matter. Time in this house isn't a line. It's a spiral, always curving inward, always folding back onto itself. I try not to think about how long I've been here. Not because I'm afraid of the number, but because I'm afraid it's already too late for numbers to matter. I stopped speaking my name because every time I did, I heard it echo back, not as an echo, but as a response, a second voice. The same tone, same pitch, but older, hungrier, heavier. It wasn't just repeating after me. It was wearing the name. The first time it happened, I was standing in the hallway mirror. I had just whispered my name aloud, hoping to anchor myself in something real, something mine. The air around me shivered. Not the mirror, not the house. The air, like it had been listening, like it had been waiting for me to give it permission. And from the mirror, the name came back. Not immediately, not like an echo. It waited, it tasted it. Then, from the mouth of my reflection, I heard the name whispered back to me like a secret I shouldn't have said aloud. That's when I stopped speaking. Not just my name. Anything. The house has too many ears now. The walls breathe harder when I talk. The mirrors fog at the sound of my voice. Once, I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because madness was leaning too close. And every mirror in the house responded. The reflections all looked up. At once. Hundreds of me. Some smiling. Some not. One bled from its mouth as it laughed with me. And when I stopped, it didn't. It just kept laughing until its face cracked apart. That's what he wants. Breakage. He doesn't take you in one clean rip. He chips away. Piece by piece. until what's left is hollow enough for him to fill. And I am beginning to feel hollow. Not just mentally, physically. The other day I reached for a light switch, and my hand went through the wall. It wasn't an illusion. I felt the cool slide of the surface at first, but then it gave. Like mist. Or like a memory of a wall fading in front of me. I pulled my hand back and stared at it. Still solid. Still mine. But the hallway had noticed. It hadn't been a wall at all. It was him. He was testing boundaries again. Seeing what I'd touch. What I'd trust. Where the fractures were. Because that's what he does. He doesn't steal you by force. He waits for you to offer yourself. Bit by bit. Like I did when I spoke my name. Or when I opened that hatch in the floor. Or when I started believing the versions of me in the mirrors looked more put together than I ever did. He waits for you to envy yourself. And once you do, once you start wishing you were the version of you that isn't real, he steps closer. I've stopped looking in mirrors completely now. I've started feeling around the house in the dark. Counting steps. Mapping floorboards. Using my breath as a compass. But even then, he's finding ways in. I woke up this morning with a taste in my mouth I couldn't explain. Metallic, like rusted iron and ash. I spat into the sink. It wasn't spit. It was ink. Thick, black, swirling. And the water didn't wash it away. It absorbed it. Turned dark. Then the faucet creaked and spoke in my voice. Let me say it this time. I smashed the sink with my bare hands. My knuckles split. Skin tore. Bone pressed against air. But even bleeding, I didn't feel pain. I felt emptier, lighter. Like I had left another piece of myself behind. And that's the plan, isn't it? That's always been the plan. To replace me slowly enough that I don't notice until it's done. To make me hand over the parts of myself I'm least proud of. The bitterness, the grief, the fear. And then the parts I cherish, the laughter, the memories, the names of those I've loved. Until I am just shell. A hollow name echoing through an abandoned house that still calls itself home. But I still remember one thing. One truth I haven't let go of yet. He still doesn't know the name I never said aloud. Not the name I was given. Not the one my grandmother used. The first name. The one I only ever whispered in dreams. The one I kept to myself when I was scared as a child and used to pretend I could protect myself with words. It's my word. And I haven't spoken it in years. If I say it now, if I scream it through the mirrors, maybe, just maybe, it will remind the house whose body this used to be. Maybe it will light a fire in the parts of me that still remember who I was before I opened that door. Before I stared too long. Before I envied a version of me that didn't blink. I'm going to try. I'm going back to the center of the house. Where the mirrors first began to appear. Where the humming used to come from. Where I first saw him trying on my smile. I'll speak the name once. Just once. And if I vanish after that, if the house closes in around me like a mouth swallowing a scream, then at least it'll choke on something that was truly mine. The room I returned to was not the one I left. It wore the same dimensions, yes, the same 4 walls, same creaky floor, the same water-stained ceiling, but everything inside had shifted. The light through the boarded windows was the color of bone, thin and gray, as though it had passed through generations before reaching me. The air was heavier, sour with rot and rust, like breath caught in a corpse's mouth. The mirrors, they were all waiting. I counted 17 in the walls, 8 stacked on the floor, and at least 4 leaning against one another like gossiping guests at a funeral. They didn't show me anymore. Not fully. Just bits, a mouth, a blink, a partial silhouette. Every image slightly delayed, like they were running footage from an old reel. This is where it all started. The center of the infection. The place where he first turned his head just a second too late. And now, I was back, not with rage, not with hope, but with a name in my throat. Not his name, not mine, the other one. The true one. The word that doesn't get spoken because it doesn't belong in light. I've carried it for so long I forgot I had it. But now, as I stood in that room, surrounded by every version of myself that had ever stepped too close to a mirror, it surfaced like something rising from beneath cracked ice. He was close. I could feel him, not as a presence, but as a gap. A hollow pressure in the room, like a seat reserved at the head of a table. My heart didn't beat faster. It slowed, sensing to something deeper. A rhythm in the house, a pulse in the walls. The mirrors began to vibrate just slightly, not enough to shatter, just enough to stir. And then they did something I wasn't ready for. They began to breathe. Glass shouldn't move like that. Shouldn't flex like a chest inhaling. Shouldn't exhale mist across the room, but they did, one after another. Slow, synchronized, patient, watching me the way lungs watch for air. That's when I realized I had one chance. One only. If I hesitated, he'd consume the sound. If I screamed it, he'd twist it. So I whispered it. The name. A sound made of ash and memory. A syllable not meant for ears but for roots. The moment it passed my lips, the air in the room split. No thunder, no quake. Just a tear, clean and perfect. Like opening a scar that had never healed right. And then came the voices. Not one. Hundreds, not in pain, not in anger. But in recognition. They knew the name. They had heard it before. In the dark. In dreams, in the moments just before surrender. And with it came him. Not through the mirrors this time, but through me. My ribs tightened. My eyes blurred. Every part of me screamed to flee, but I couldn't. My legs were rooted, my hands numb. He rose from the center of the floor like smoke, shapeless, faceless, but wearing the echoes of me. I saw fragments of myself orbiting his form like shattered memories. My baby teeth, the scar on my shin from age 11. My grandmother's hand brushing my cheek. He was built from me. He didn't steal who I was. He waited for me to outgrow it. Say it again, he whispered, not aloud, but inside my head. Say it louder this time. Let them all remember. I didn't move, because now I understood. The name wasn't mine alone. It belonged to all of them, all the lost, all the hollowed out, all the mouths humming behind the walls. Saying it again would feed the structure, give it another layer, another face to add to the collection. And this time, I would be the architect. So I turned toward the nearest mirror. Looked deep into the only reflection still mimicking me. And I did something I hadn't done since this began. I stepped forward, not to run, not to hide, to confront. The moment my skin touched the surface, it burned, not fire, but memory, every mistake, every failure, every fear I never spoke aloud. They surged through my fingers, down my spine, pooling behind my eyes. He wanted me to pull back, to flinch, to forget. But I didn't. I leaned in, and I whispered a new word, a different name, my name, the one I chose for myself, not given, not inherited, not whispered through bloodlines or rituals. Mine, it had no power, no magic, no spell, but it had truth, and that was what he couldn't wear. The mirrors shattered, not explosively, reluctantly, as if breaking their skin was the last thing they wanted. As if they were alive, each one burst into fragments that floated, hovered, then dissolved into nothing but dust. And the dust hummed. Not a song this time, a single tone. One long, low note, like morning. The room began to sink around me, not physically, but in memory. The walls peeled back to reveal places I'd been but forgotten. My mother's kitchen. My high school locker. My first apartment. All stitched together in crooked seams, all haunted by pieces of me he had scavenged over time. He'd built his throne from scraps of my life, and now it was crumbling. I fell to my knees not in pain, but in exhaustion. Everything inside me felt scraped clean. And as the last memory faded from the wall, my grandmother's smile, yellowed with age and sorrow, I heard him speak one final time. You ruined the shape, then silence. I don't know how long I stayed there. Eventually the room was empty. No mirrors.
No voice, no hum. Just me.
Breathing. Bleeding. Whole. I found a notebook later. One I hadn't written in. But the handwriting was mine. Jagged, panicked, but mine. It only had one sentence inside. When it starts again, do not answer the echo. And on the back cover, another line. If you hear your name whispered from the dark, say nothing. It's already watching. I keep the notebook with me now. The house isn't gone. It never is. I still hear things in the vents. Sometimes when I walk past a window, my reflection doesn't quite follow. I wake up with ink on my fingers. My dreams have static in them. Sometimes I remember things I never lived, but I'm me. And I've learned the difference between a voice and an echo. One belongs to the living. The other just pretends to. The house is quiet now, but not in a way that brings comfort. It's the kind of silence you hear in a funeral home long after the service has ended. A silence that lingers too long, stretching itself out like something crawling across a ceiling you refuse to look up at. No hums. No footsteps. No laughter echoing from behind closed doors. But silence in this house never means peace. It means something is listening closer than before. It began again with a sound I've come to fear more than anything else, my own voice. Not echoing, not mimicked, repeated. Exactly. Down to the breath between syllables. The twitch of emotion I try to hide when I say certain names. Even the way my tone rises slightly when I lie to myself. I heard it just outside the bedroom door. I was standing in the hall, holding my breath, and my voice came back to me like a message left behind in a place I hadn't been yet. I'm okay, it said. Then again. I'm okay. Then again. I'm okay. Same pitch, same rhythm, same lie. Only it didn't stop. The voice kept looping, each time a little more distorted, a little more desperate. By the fifth repetition, the tone had changed. It cracked at the edges. The voice wasn't just copying me anymore. It was breaking. By the ninth, it started laughing. Not loudly, not mockingly, just amused. Like it had finally caught me in a trap I didn't realize I'd set for myself. I turned and walked toward the sound. The hallway stretched longer than it should be. Doors appeared where there had never been any. Most were locked. Some pulsed as I passed, like they breathed through their own wood. The house had grown again, fed on something. Every inch of it remembered me. My steps, my hesitation. It shifted under my weight, soft like rotwood beneath a veneer of polish. Something beneath the floorboards flexed as I moved. The echo continued behind me, now repeating different words. Things I said years ago in arguments, in fear, in sorrow. Apologies I never gave. Lies I told myself when sleep wouldn't come. I'll leave tomorrow. She didn't mean to hurt me. I'm not afraid of being alone. Each one pulled from the archive of my own mind. Words I forgot I ever said. Thoughts that had turned to dust now revived. Recited by a house that never forgets anything. That's when I found the echo room. At the end of the hall was a door I had never seen. White. Clean. It didn't match the others. No splintering wood, no tarnished handle, no black handprints or carvings in the frame. It looked new. Like it had been added this morning. A door made to look safe. I opened it without hesitation, and I walked into the cold. The room inside wasn't cold because of temperature. There were no windows, no drafts, no visible source of chill. But the moment I crossed the threshold, something left me. Not just warmth, not just breath, memory. It's hard to explain what it feels like to feel parts of your life unravel in real time. I forgot my childhood bedroom layout first, then the name of my third grade teacher, then the smell of my father's cologne. Small things, details, threads. Then it went deeper. I forgot the sound of my laughter, the color of my grandmother's eyes, the exact shape of my own smile. Inside the echo room, everything that made me me began to slip. It was slow, not like falling asleep, but like drowning in inches. The room didn't hum. It whispered, but not words. It whispered absence. The walls were mirrors, not glass, not reflective in the traditional sense. They didn't show my face. They showed my place. Like shadows left behind by bodies long removed. Silhouettes burned into the structure of the house like fingerprints in wax. each one a different pose, sitting, crying, staring into the corner. One stood in front of the wall with both hands pressed flat against it, mouth open as if mid-scream. I couldn't see their face, but I didn't need to. I already knew. They were all me. Every version of me that ever almost gave up. Every version that said yes in dreams. That allowed the voice behind the mirror to finish their sentence. That agreed, silently, to wear a face that wasn't theirs. That woke up wrong and didn't tell anyone. I walked between the shadows, and as I moved, each one started whispering again, not words, just sounds. Gasps, inhales, breaths caught between sobs. And I began to understand the echo room wasn't meant to show me reflections. It was meant to show me what I would become. One mirror on the far wall showed a version of me sitting perfectly still, no longer breathing. His skin looked stretched, glossy, too tight. His eyes were open but glassy, unmoving. And on the wall behind him, carved deep in something dark and dry, was a phrase I felt in my chest before I saw it with my eyes. You didn't say it fast enough. That version of me had been too slow, too cautious. He held back the name too long, and the echo him stepped through the gap left behind. I turned away from the mirrors. My legs felt heavy, like they remembered things I didn't. I walked to the center of the room and spoke aloud for the first time in hours. I remember now, and the house listened. The walls pulled back, the mirrors bent inward, not breaking but yielding, and the echo paused. My voice stopped looping. For just one moment, everything paused, because I had said something unexpected. I remembered, and that was the one thing it couldn't anticipate, because he had spent so long taking, mimicking, rewriting, that he assumed my identity was no longer my own, that I had been hollowed enough to become a vessel. But he was wrong, because buried under the fear, under the static and the mimicry and the false smiles, there was still one unspoken truth left in me I had not let go. Not completely. And so, I spoke the name again, not his, not the one he fed on, not Vazeth, mine. The room shuddered, the walls flexed. One mirror cracked straight down the center. Another shattered without sound. The reflections began to twitch, some in pain, some in defiance. The version of me in the far corner, the one with the scream stuck in his throat, finally opened his mouth and finished the scream. Glass exploded across the room, the walls bled light, the silence broke like a dam, and then I heard it. Him, the echo, roaring in a language made of memory fragments and stolen breath. Not angry, desperate, because I had done what the others hadn't. I hadn't whispered my name for comfort. I had reclaimed it, and that broke something inside him. The echo room began to collapse inward. The silhouettes burned into the walls began to fade, and the last thing I saw before I was thrown backward into the hallway was my own face. Smiling, but not the version he wore. Mine, tired, bloodied, but alive. I landed hard outside the room. The door slammed shut behind me, and when I turned to look, it was gone. Just another patch of wall. No knob, no seams, no sign it had ever existed. But I know better. It's still there, waiting for the next version of me who forgets, waiting for the next whisper to go unanswered. The house has grown quiet again, but I know that silence. It's not peace, it's pause, and I still have work to do. Because somewhere deeper in this place, beyond mirrors, beyond memory, beyond names and shadows, he's still building, still watching, still waiting for me to forget again. And I won't. Not this time. The house is dreaming again. I can feel it. Not in the walls this time, not in the floorboards or the mirrors. In the air. It shifts when I breathe, like it's learning my rhythm again, adjusting its tempo to mine. But this dream isn't for it. It's for me. Or maybe of me. I'm no longer sure which direction the watching goes. Whether it's me looking through the windows, or the house looking out from behind my eyes. Because now, the rooms remember me before I enter them. Doors swing open as I approach. Lights flicker not from faulty wires, but from anticipation. I used to think this place was only haunted by him, the echo, the mimic, the shape I called Vizeth. But the longer I stay, the more I see there are others. Things that don't speak. Things that don't mimic. Things that dream. It started with the hallway again. That same stretch of wood and wallpaper I've crossed 100 times, except now it changes. Not subtly. Not in trickery. Brazenly. The pictures on the walls are new. They weren't there yesterday. Old sepia-toned portraits of me, but not me. My face, yes, but in clothes I've never worn, standing beside people I've never met. One shows me in a coal miner's uniform, dirt smeared across my cheek. Another, in a military jacket from a war I wasn't alive for. And in every photo, my eyes are the same, blank. Like someone wore my face but forgot to animate the soul behind it. They're showing me versions, not of my past, of what could have been, possibilities, echoes, test runs, maybe even blueprints. But these rooms, they know too much. One room at the end of the hall opened without me touching the handle. A child's room. Pale yellow walls. A rocking horse that moved without rhythm. Toys scattered in neat, unnatural patterns. Concentric circles, spirals, careful rows of dismembered dolls lined head to toe, as if waiting to be counted. And on the far wall, a mural, drawn in crayon. Of me, but not recent. Me as a child. Wearing clothes I recognize from old family videos. Down to the detail, the scrape on the knee, the tear on the sleeve. But here's the thing. I never drew that. No one in my family ever painted it. That childlike scrawl, those jagged colors, they were fresh. Still smudged at the edges. It's not a painting. It's a memory. A memory this room shouldn't have. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me with a softness that made me sick. Not a slam. Not a bang. Just a slow click. Like a tongue pressing gently to the roof of a mouth. And then the room spoke. Not with sound. With feeling. Grief. A kind I hadn't felt in years. The kind that wraps around your ribs and squeezes slow. I knew this sadness. I recognized it. But it wasn't mine. It was the room's. And that's when it hit me. These rooms weren't just watching me. They weren't mimicking or mocking. They were learning how to feel. They were becoming more than walls. They were becoming selves. Each one a mind of its own. Each one forming its own memory of me. I left that room without looking back. Something in the mural had changed. The crayon eyes were following me. I heard the rocking horse creak 3 more times as I walked away, each movement heavier, slower, as if a new weight had climbed aboard. I didn't dare check. Back in the hallway, the lights had gone dim. Not off. Dim. Like the house was trying to create mood, to set a tone. It was building scenes now, not just rooms. Moments. That's when I found the kitchen again, but not as it had been. It was mine, yes, the same floor plan, but pristine. Bright. Morning sun through clean curtains. A cup of coffee waiting on the table, steam curling gently, and seated at the table me. Not breathing, not blinking, just watching the door. This version of me was perfect. Too perfect. Hair neat, clothes pressed, skin unscarred. Unbroken. As if the house had finally finished sculpting its ideal host. And when I stepped forward, the reflection did too. Not a mirror, a second me, wearing my best day like a costume, and it smiled. Not a wide grin, not a sneer, a welcome. Like it was relieved I'd arrived, like it had been waiting to be seen, and it spoke, voice soft and exact. You've finally caught up. Sit. We're almost ready. I didn't move. It didn't force me. It just tilted its head, studying my reluctance with calm understanding. Then, it said something that chilled me deeper than any whisper from the vents. We're not taking you. You brought us. That was the moment everything shifted, because the worst part is, I believe it. I started this, not on purpose, not knowingly. But when I moved in, when I brought my grief, my silence, my regrets into these walls, the house fed. It didn't trap me, it grew into me. Every forgotten ache, every unsaid word, every version of myself I buried, this place gave them rooms, names, faces. And now, they want to be seen. They want me to live among them. Not as a prisoner. As an addition. Another room in the house. Another echo with a heartbeat. I backed away from the kitchen. The reflection didn't follow. It just lifted the coffee cup to its lips and sipped with perfect precision. My mouth moved in sync. And that's when I realized I had already started to mimic it. I ran. I don't know how long. I passed doors that led to staircases, that led to attics, that curved into basements, that bled into corridors with no walls. At one point I turned and saw myself running toward me, and I had to throw myself into a side room just to escape. When I slammed the door behind me, everything went black, and then I was in a field. Wide, empty, a hill in the center. The house behind me distant, flickering. I stood barefoot in the grass, breath shallow, unsure of how I got here. And then I heard the humming. Not from the house, from the ground. I dropped to my knees and placed my ear against the soil. Voices, hundreds, and they were all saying the same thing. One word, over and over. A name. My name. Not the one the house gave me. Not the one I say aloud. The one I whisper to myself in dreams. The one I thought no one else knew. And the last thing I heard before the field folded back into the hallway, before the house wrapped me in itself again, was a voice that wasn't mine, but sounded close enough to hurt. It said, "You never really left. You just moved deeper." Now I sit here, writing this on a page that will probably vanish tomorrow. The paper feels more like skin now, the pen more like a needle. I write not because it helps, but because the silence is growing teeth. Somewhere in the house, the rooms are still dreaming of me, and I can feel them smiling. The house has stopped pretending it doesn't know me. Every corner I turn now feels rehearsed, like I'm walking a path written long before I arrived. I used to think I was moving through it. Now I think it's moving around me. Like a stage play shifting its backdrops between scenes, casting familiar shapes in unfamiliar places to keep me dizzy. But tonight, it did something different, something worse. It tried to show me why it was made, why I was chosen, why these walls breathe with memory and hunger and echo. And it did this not through words, not through whispers and vents or flickering lights. No, it showed me with something far more cruel. Blueprints, not of the house, of me. It happened after the hallway changed again. I don't even know what direction I was walking in. Nothing connects anymore. One step takes you to a place you've never seen. Another step brings you face to face with something you buried when you were 7. But this time, the hallway ended in a narrow staircase that spiraled down into a space I swear shouldn't exist. The air grew warmer the deeper I went, and not just heat, presence. Like something exhaling gently into the narrow stone corridor. Each step downward made the sound of my heartbeat louder. I wasn't scared. I was anticipated. At the bottom was a door without a handle. It opened anyway. The room beyond was cold metal. No wood, no rot, no cracked wallpaper or peeling plaster. Just steel. And on the walls, sheets of paper pinned with precision. Drawings, diagrams, schematics of me. Not pictures, not photos, but detailed renderings. Anatomical cross-sections, emotion charts. Lists of memories categorized by weight and regret. One page was titled Most Influential Nightmares, ages 4-17. Another triggers for dissociation under controlled pressure. They weren't just watching, they were building, perfecting, rewriting. Every failure, every misstep, every secret fear I tried to swallow, laid out like engineering flaws. Some pages were labeled corrected, others still leaking. I reached for one, and the metal groaned beneath my fingers like it didn't want to be touched. The paper didn't crinkle. It winced. And as I pulled it free, I saw the next layer beneath, a mirror. But this one didn't show my face. It showed blueprints of what I might become. Twisted, modified. A version of me with joints bent backward, with too many teeth and too few bones. A prototype built not for life, but for inhabiting. Something made to be filled. That's when I understood. The house never wanted to keep me here. It wanted to remake me. Not spiritually, not metaphorically, physically. It was reshaping my entire self to be inhabitable, like a shell, like a suit, like a vessel waiting for its final tenant. That's what Vaseth had been doing all along. Not mimicking, not stealing, manufacturing, testing one version of me after another, running simulations through mirrors, adjusting, tuning, deleting the ones that cracked under pressure, keeping the ones that broke just right. It wasn't enough to mirror me. He wanted to improve me by his standards. And the worst part, some part of me agrees, because deep down, when I look in the mirror and see a more composed, more fearless version of myself smiling back, I want to become that. I crave it. I envy it. And that's how he wins. Not by overpowering, but by convincing. By showing you a better version of yourself. Then asking, ever so gently, wouldn't you rather be this? That voice, the one that hums in the pipes at night, it's no longer distant. It speaks in full sentences now. It asks questions when I breathe. It finishes thoughts I don't say aloud. Tonight, when I stood in the blueprint room, it said something new. You're almost perfect now. Just one piece left. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the drawings from the wall, burn the plans, erase the diagrams. But I didn't, because I needed to know what was missing, what piece was left. The answer was taped to the far wall, behind a glass frame, a small note, written in my own hand, though I have no memory of writing it. 4 words you never forgave yourself. That was the flaw, the hole in the model. Forgiveness, all the rewrites, all the copies, all the tests, and none of them could recreate the version of me that had let go. Because he never had. He never forgave. He never healed. So the model stayed incomplete. Because no version of me ever truly released the guilt. The echo was always built on that cracked foundation. And I think that's why the house brought me here. Not to trap me. Not even to replace me. To fix me. So it could finish him. A perfect echo needs a perfect original. And if I don't give it that, it will keep building. Keep trying. Keep dreaming of better blueprints, better regrets, better ruins. Because the house dreams of me now, and it doesn't just want to remember. It wants to improve. I left the blueprint room, the floor closing silently behind me. My footsteps echo now in ways they didn't before. There's a second cadence. Lighter. Delayed. Another version of me walking a half step behind. It isn't breathing yet, but I know it's only a matter of time. I don't hear it anymore. That's the first thing I noticed. It walks behind me, but there are no footsteps. No sound. No shift in floorboards or air. Just presence. I've tried tricking it, stopping suddenly, darting into rooms, spinning fast to catch it off guard, but nothing. It always stays just behind me, like my own shadow refusing to be seen. The absence of its sound is louder than any scream I've heard in this house. It's not stalking me. It's studying me, walking me like a maze, learning the patterns I don't know I'm making. And I think it's waiting for me to reach a conclusion it already knows. This house, it stopped being a place weeks ago. Maybe longer. Now it feels like a memory with too many rewrites. Each room a paragraph in a story I never wanted to tell. Each hallway a sentence that loops back on itself. Sometimes the wallpaper peels to reveal old photographs. Snapshots of places I've never been but somehow recognize. I don't question them anymore. I just keep moving. Because every time I stop, I feel it lean in closer. That version of me, that echo, that thing, it doesn't need mirrors anymore. It's shed the need for reflection. Now it walks on its own, and tonight it spoke. I was in a stairwell that shouldn't exist, concrete steps going down forever, or maybe looping. I can't be sure. I counted 48 before the walls changed color, from chipped white to a sickly amber. That's when I heard the voice. Not from behind me, not even around me, inside me, like it borrowed my thoughts to speak. I remember what you did. Not accusatory, not angry, just matter of fact. And that's the worst tone to hear from something that looks like you, cold certainty. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. It continued anyway. You left him. I froze. Not because I didn't know what it meant, but because I did. Something I buried so deep I stopped feeling the weight of it. A moment I folded up and locked away my brother. The night he begged me not to leave him in the woods. The way I turned back once, saw his flashlight flicker out, and kept walking. I told myself he'd follow. Told myself he was playing a game. That he was right behind me. He wasn't. They found him 3 days later, and I've lived in the echo of that silence ever since. I never said it aloud, not to anyone, not even to myself, but the house knew. Because the house doesn't need doors or diaries. It reads guilt like Braille, and now so does he. The echo. The shape. My other, he used my voice to repeat it again. You left him. This time, softer, almost sympathetic, and I realized that's its angle now. It's done mimicking. Now it understands. It doesn't want to scare me. It wants to be me. And in a twisted way, it already is. Because I can feel it inside my memory now, walking around like it owns the place. Dusting off moments I had hidden, rearranging them, framing them differently. It shows me versions of the story where I stayed, where I turned back, where my brother lived, where we grew up together, where I never found this house because I never needed to. Then it shows me the reality. Alone, shivering, calling his name too late, and the house hums with approval. Because it feeds on that gap between what was and what could have been. I ran again, but the stairwell didn't end. My breath didn't fog. The temperature didn't change. Only the walls, images now etched in them. Sketches. Memories drawn like crime scenes, each one labeled. Regret 1A, Regret 1C suppressed, Regret 1F's unprocessed. And then, at the landing, him. Not a mirror, not a hallucination. Him, the echo. Standing, wearing me like a tailored suit, but this time different. His eyes. They were mine, exactly. No delay, no artificial gleam. Just my eyes looking back at me with understanding. I'm not the villain, he said. He didn't move. Didn't threaten. I'm what's left. When you couldn't carry it anymore, I didn't speak. My throat burned. He stepped forward. No sound, still no footsteps. Just presence. He reached out, slowly, like offering a handshake across dimensions. And I knew this was the choice. Not a possession. Not an attack. An invitation. Because if I took that hand, I'd finally let go of the weight. The guilt. The memory. The pain. He would carry it all. And I could disappear into something simpler. Hollow. But free. He said one last thing before the lights blinked out. You were never meant to live like this. Let me be the version that can. And then darkness. Complete. Until I woke up. Back in a room I hadn't seen since day one. The bedroom. Same sheets. Same creaking fan. Same single window showing a moon that never moves. But now, there's a second pillow on the bed. Indentation fresh. Still warm. And on the nightstand a photograph of me and him, side by side, smiling. Same clothes. Same face. Same eyes. Only difference, he's holding my brother's hand. And my brother is alive. Laughing. Whole. The caption below. Scrawled in handwriting I can't deny. What could have been, if you let me in. I haven't spoken since. Because I'm starting to forget which one I am, and I don't know if that's a warning, or a promise. There are rooms I avoid now. Not because they're loud. Not because they move or whisper or hum. But because they remember things I don't want to. Not in fragments, not like dreams, but in full, painful detail. I came across one last night. I hadn't meant to. I thought I was walking toward the foyer again, where the stairwell sometimes reappears. But the house had changed its skin overnight. The wallpaper peeled itself into a pattern I recognized, tiny blue stars on pale white. My childhood bedroom. Down to the exact tilt of the bed. The dresser, where I once hid drawings I was too embarrassed to show anyone. Even the dent in the closet door where I once threw a lamp during a nightmare. And the moment I stepped in, the air thickened. Not with dust or heat, but with grief. There was someone sitting on the bed. Small, still, a boy, and I knew without seeing his face it was me. Or rather, a moment of me. 8 years old, hugging a stuffed bear so tightly that its seams had begun to split. He didn't look up, didn't speak, but I remembered this version. I had pushed him so far back in my memory, I nearly forgot what it had felt like to be him. It was the night I first understood what loss meant. Not in a storybook way, not like the vague idea of death told to children, but for real. The night the phone rang. The night the silence in the house became permanent. The night no one came to tuck me in. I should have backed out. I should have closed the door. But the house doesn't let you walk away from pain. It's worked so hard to preserve. The door closed behind me before I even knew it had moved, and the boy on the bed finally turned his head. Tears had dried on his cheeks, but his eyes were blank. No fear, no confusion. Just the hollow ache of someone who's accepted that the world will never again make sense. "You told me it would stop," he said. His voice didn't match his body. Too steady, too old, I couldn't answer. "You promised we'd forget," he said again, louder this time. "But all you did was bury me." The bed creaked as he stood. His arms hung at his sides, and I realized his hands were bleeding, thin red lines across his palms. The stuffing from the bear trailed from his fingers. "You forgot what it felt like." But I didn't. I stayed here, in this room, waiting. He stepped forward and the walls began to pulse. Heartbeat steady, slow, heavy. I cried for days and you turned it into a story. You made it poetic. You made it art. You stole my grief to sound profound. My knees buckled. Because he was right. I remembered the years after. The way I wrote about that night. The way I talked about it like it had shaped me. Not scarred me. I used it, turned it into metaphors, but I never healed from it, and he knew. Because he was the part of me that never got the closure I claimed I had. I backed toward the dresser, but it wasn't furniture anymore. It was a wall of mirrors now, cracked, not shattered, and in each reflection was a different version of that same boy. Some with wide, unblinking eyes. Others screaming silently. One curled up in the corner, mouthing the word please over and over. And then I saw him again. The other me, standing in the farthest mirror, tall, composed, wearing my adulthood like it finally fit. He smiled, not mockingly, knowingly, like this was all part of the process. The house wasn't torturing me, it was preparing me, tearing out the rot, room by room, memory by memory. And he stepped forward, through the mirror, into the room. The boy on the bed didn't flinch. He just whispered, "Don't forget me again." And the other me reached out, not to comfort, to absorb, to pull that pain back into the whole, to complete something that had always been fragmented. I should have screamed, should have stopped it. But I watched, because part of me wanted it, and when it happened, when the boy dissolved into the man, when the grief entered that echo of me, the room changed. The blue stars dimmed. The wallpaper peeled away, and I was standing alone, the bed gone, the dresser gone, just a single note on the floor, written in that same neat, unshakable handwriting. "He remembers so you don't have to." I wanted to run, but the hallway outside wasn't the same anymore. It was endless, lined with doors, each one marked with my name, and behind each one, a different memory I had tried to silence. They were all open, slightly ajar, waiting. I heard the echoes inside them, voices calling my name the way only family does, the way only friends do, the way only he does. And I realized, this house doesn't trap people. It collects what they leave behind. The feelings you bury, the moments you rewrite, the pain you numb. It keeps them safe, not for you, for him. Because he's not just building a better version of me. He's building a version that feels everything I chose to forget. And every step I take, I bring him closer to completion. I'm not just walking through a haunted house. I'm walking through my own unfinished heart. And the further I go, the more I wonder if I'm the one haunting him. It took me longer to notice the door than it should have. Maybe because it wasn't there before. Or maybe it was always there, but I was only allowed to see it now. That's how this place works. It doesn't show you what you're ready for, it shows you what you can't avoid anymore. This door had no frame, no knob, not even hinges, just a flat slab of pale wood embedded in the hallway like a sealed scar, and it pulsed, faintly. Like something behind it was breathing slow and deep, but it wasn't the breath of a person. It was the breath of a space, a place that had forgotten itself. When I touched the surface, I felt nothing. No temperature, no resistance, no sound behind it. Like pressing your hand against the memory of a place you once visited in a dream and barely remember. The wood rippled where I touched it, and then it simply opened. No creak, no sudden pull. It opened as if I had already agreed to enter long ago. Inside was darkness, but not the kind that hides things. It was a hollow sort of dark, a darkness that wanted to be filled. A blank stage, a void waiting for a scene. My first instinct was to speak, to test it, but my throat tightened as soon as I stepped in. Like the air didn't allow sound. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door vanished behind me. No surprise there. But what did surprise me was what I didn't feel. No fear, no anxiety, no weight. For the first time since I stepped into this house, I didn't feel the gravity of what had been. No whispers, no regrets climbing my spine, just emptiness, but not peaceful, just absent, like I had stepped out of myself completely. The room had no walls, or maybe it did, but they were too far to see, or too close to notice. I moved forward, though I'm not sure my legs moved. My body felt separate from intention here, like the room responded to thought, not motion. After what felt like minutes, maybe hours, a shape formed in the darkness, a chair, wooden, familiar. The kind you find in kitchens that still smell like bread, and sitting in the chair was no one. But the chair remembered. I know it sounds impossible, but it remembered being sat in. It held the indentation of weight long lifted. The grooves of fingers once clenched on its arms. The wood was stained dark where tears had once fallen, not literally, but emotionally. This chair didn't just exist, it recalled. And when I blinked, another object appeared, a record player, cracked, unplugged. But the moment it existed, music began to play, a warped lullaby. Not the one from my childhood, but the one from his. The echoes. Because this wasn't my room. It wasn't one of the memories I had buried. It was a memory he made for himself. A space to forget, a room to unmake what had been copied. And that's when I saw the wall, not built of stone or plaster or glass, but built of faces, hundreds, maybe more, all versions of me, some twisted, some serene, some nearly unrecognizable, each etched into the surface like fossils caught mid-scream or mid-prayer. And below each face, a single line. Reasons they failed. Too much guilt. Wouldn't let go. Clung to the brother. Clung to the mother. Clung to the lie. Each of these versions had been tested, built, sent into the house, and each had returned here. Broken. Incomplete. This wasn't just the room where memories were stored. It was where they were erased. The room with no memory wasn't memoryless. It was where memories went to die. And something had been watching me the whole time. Not him. Not the echo. Something older. The architect. I didn't see it, not really, but I felt it. In the way my spine stiffened when I tried to turn. In the pressure behind my eyes when I looked at the chair too long. In the sudden realization that this was not a room meant to be witnessed. The architect wasn't made of flesh. It was made of choices, failed decisions, abandoned paths. Each version of me that had walked this house and chosen wrong had helped build it. And now, standing in this void, I realized I was the only one left. The final version, the last prototype, and the architect wanted to know, would I fail too? The music slowed, the faces began to whisper, and not in unison. Each told their own truth. One cried, "You lied to stay." Another hissed, "You left to forget." A third one whispered, almost lovingly, "You came here because you wanted to be replaced." I covered my ears, but the voices curled inside my skull. They didn't need sound. They had memory. The architect asked no questions. It offered. A doorway opened before me, tall, black, with no frame. And just beyond it, I saw peace, real peace. A quiet life. A version of me smiling, aging, free. A world where the house was just a dream I never remembered. I could walk through. Forget all of this. Be made whole again. But something stopped me. A sound. A faint one. Familiar. A child's laugh, my brother's. Not from the doorway. From behind me. Still trapped. Still waiting. Still part of this story. If I stepped through, I would lose the house. Lose the echo. Lose the pain. But I would also lose him. And suddenly, I understood. This house was never about escape. It was about choice. Would I carry what the others abandoned? Would I remember what the house tried to unwrite? The architect didn't speak. It didn't need to. I turned away from the door and walked back into the dark. The chair cracked behind me. The faces howled. The architect watched, and somewhere deep in the walls, he smiled. Because I was no longer trying to leave. I was trying to end it. For good. The house knows I made my choice, and it didn't retaliate. It didn't slam the doors shut or flood the halls with screams. It did something worse. It went silent. Utterly, impossibly silent. A kind of quiet that presses on the lungs. It's the silence after a scream. The stillness after a gunshot. The moment when your ears ring, but the world holds its breath. This silence follows me now. It trails behind me like smoke from a candle just blown out. Even my own footsteps feel muted, like the floors aren't interested in responding anymore. I thought choosing to remember would make me stronger, give me control. Instead, it made the house a distant, not absent, just watching, waiting, as though it has nothing left to say, and is waiting for me to speak next. That's when I saw the mirror again, but not just any mirror, the original one, the one that first showed me him, the one I broke, the one I thought I destroyed. It's back, hung neatly at the end of a hallway I didn't recognize. No cracks, no dust, gleaming like it had never been touched. Except this time, it didn't reflect anything, not the walls, not the floor, not me, just black, pure, empty black. I stood in front of it, close enough to feel the chill that pulsed from its surface. It was like standing near a deep, still body of water at night. It didn't show me. It swallowed me. The longer I stared, the more I felt like I was drifting. Like the mirror wasn't a surface, but a tunnel, and something was moving at the other end. Not toward me. With me. As if my body was still standing in the hallway, but myself was being pulled through deeper and deeper, toward something unseen. Then, finally, the mirror blinked. Yes, it blinked. The blackness didn't shimmer or ripple. It closed like a giant eyelid had shut tight. And for a split second, before it opened again, I saw what lay beyond the lid. A corridor of mirrors, endless, and in each one me, not reflections, copies. Some screaming, some smiling, some dead-eyed and hollow. 100 versions of me, each at a different stage of surrender. Some had merged with him. Some were becoming him. Some were too far gone to call human anymore, and in the center of it all, one empty mirror. Waiting. That's when I realized the truth. The mirror wasn't here to reflect me anymore. It was asking a question. It wanted to know, which version am I? Am I the final one? The one who broke the loop? Or just another frame in a hallway that never ends? The silence began to break then. Not with sound, with memory. It started slow, smells first. The scent of cold metal, burnt toast, the warmth of my mother's sweater. Then touch. Bare feet on a frozen porch, the sting of a slap I pretended didn't happen, the warmth of a hug from someone long gone. Then voices. Familiar. Terrible. Don't leave me. You always leave. You said you'd be here. You promised. You lied. These weren't just echoes from the house. They were from the others. The ones behind the mirrors. The ones that didn't make it. They weren't calling for help. They were calling for closure. One voice rose above the rest. Steady, measured. So close to mine it hurt. You've seen us now. You've chosen memory over mercy. But can you bear us? Can you carry us? I didn't answer aloud. I couldn't. But I took a step forward, into the black, into the mirror, and it swallowed me whole. No shattering, no resistance, just surrender. Inside it was cold, but not in temperature. Cold like disappointment. Cold like reality stripped of hope. This place, this mirror dimension, or whatever it was, felt less like a trap and more like a ledger. Each version of me stood in rows like statues, frozen mid-movement. One reaching for forgiveness. One crawling toward an open door. One pressing a hand to a bleeding chest. They were all stuck in their final moment. Then I saw him. The first one. The original echo. The one that wore my face so perfectly it almost fooled me. He stood at the far end alone. Not smiling. Not angry. Just tired. I was the first to try, he said. The one who believed I could carry what you couldn't. But even I was wrong. I was born from your silence, but I was never enough. I stepped closer. He didn't move. I became everything you buried. I gave shape to what you refused to name, but you kept hiding, kept running. And so more of me were made. Each one weaker. Each one closer to the edge. He looked up at me then, and there was nothing supernatural in his eyes. Just pain. Now they're all watching you. Because you're the last one who can end this. If you fail, they all stay. I wanted to ask, stay where? But I knew. They'd stay here, frozen, trapped in the house. Living in loops of almosts and maybes, never finding peace, never fully fading. And I understood, maybe for the first time, that this wasn't just about me. It was about all of me. All the versions I created every time I ran from something. Every time I changed my name inside my head to forget who I had been. Every time I rewrote the story to make it hurt less. They all lived here now, and they wanted rest. The first echo held out his hand, a gesture of passing something over. Responsibility? Burden? Truth? I took it, and the mirror exploded. Not into glass, into light, every version of me. Every reflection, every echo, shimmered, shook, and then dissolved. The house screamed. Not in anger, in relief. And when I opened my eyes, I was back in the hallway. Alone. No footsteps behind me. No whispers in the walls. No weight pressing down. For the first time since I arrived, I felt something terrifying stillness. Not the haunted kind. The final kind. I didn't know if that meant it was over. Or just starting again. Because somewhere behind the silence, I swear I heard one last voice, you're the last, but not the only. And I realized, there may be other houses, other people, other reflections waiting. Because this isn't just a place, it's a pattern. And I just traced it all the way to its center. I thought the stillness meant it was over. That I'd reached the eye of the storm, and everything else had passed. But the truth is, this house never stops, it only waits. And the silence, it's not peace, it's pressure. Pressure building behind every inch of wall, under every floorboard, inside every mirror that hasn't cracked yet. The kind of pressure that can't hold forever. Something was coming, or worse, something was waking up. The corridors didn't change for 3 days, or maybe 3 hours. It's impossible to know how time works here. Sometimes you blink and a day is gone. Sometimes you count the ticks of your own pulse and realize a week has passed. I stayed in the hallway, half afraid to move forward, half afraid to go back. Because what if forward meant finality? And what if back meant starting all over again? Then, without warning, the floor began to breathe. Not tremble, not quake. Breathe. Slow, hiving, rhythmic, like I was standing on the chest of something sleeping just below. I dropped to one knee, pressed my palm flat to the wooden slats. They were warm now, warmer than skin, beating like a pulse, steady and low. The house has a heart, and I was standing right above it. That's when I heard it, a thud. Not loud, not angry, just deliberate. A sound that wasn't trying to frighten. It was trying to summon. I followed it, step by slow step, the rhythm beneath my feet guiding me like sonar. deeper into the house than I'd ever gone. Rooms past me that I didn't remember entering. One filled with blank portraits, their eyes scraped clean. Another with a record playing a loop of a phone ringing, over and over, with no one there to pick up. The hallway curved in on itself, and tighter until it felt like I was walking inside a throat, and then the door, iron, bolted, no handle, only a small square carved into the center, just big enough to show what lay beyond. I peered in, and saw my heart, not metaphorically, literally, beating on a stone pedestal in the center of a black chamber. Suspended by thin threads of vein, like wiring that pulsed in time with the house's breath. Every beat made the walls ripple. Every pause felt like a skipped memory. I didn't know how it had gotten there. I didn't remember it being taken. But I knew it was mine, because it hurt, not in the physical sense, in the recognition. This heart had been through everything, every betrayal, every lie, every quiet breakdown, every apology that came too late. It wasn't red anymore, it was black, not from death, from use, like a book read too many times. Pages folded, ink smudged. It beat faster when I looked at it, like it was trying to speak. And the message came not in words, but in flashes. My brother's face the night he disappeared. My mother's shaking hands after she found the note I never meant to leave. The first time I saw him, the echo, and wanted to be him instead of myself. The guilt, the self-hate. The moments of cold nothingness where I thought maybe the house was right to try and erase me. They all lived in this heart, and then I heard a voice behind me, low, tired mine. It still works. I turned slowly, and there he was again, not the mirror version, not the puppet, but him, the architect, the one who had been pulling the strings since the beginning. His face was identical to mine, but older somehow, weathered, not aged, just worn out, as though time passed differently for him. "You think you're the first to make it here?" he asked. He wasn't angry, just curious. I didn't answer. He stepped closer, eyes on the heart. "Every version of you reaches this door. Some scream, some beg. Some reach in and crush it themselves." I swallowed hard. "And me?" He finally looked at me. "You're the only one who asked who it belonged to." I blinked. "It's mine." He nodded. "Yes, but you gave it away. Every time you ran, every time you lied, every time you looked in the mirror and hoped to see something else." He circled me. "That's how I was born. You didn't want the weight, so I took it. And now it's yours again." The heart thudded louder. I felt the beat in my ribs, even without it in my chest. "You can put it back," he said. But you have to take everything with it." I knew what he meant. Forgiveness, memory, pain, all of it. Not just the parts that shaped me, the parts that scarred me. No more burying it, no more blaming him. I stepped toward the heart. He didn't stop me. The wires began to twitch, veins reaching, testing the air like insects. They knew I was close, knew I was ready, but one last question pressed against my brain like a needle. "If I take it back, what happens to you?" He gave a small smile. I stopped echoing. For a moment, I hesitated, because no matter how twisted he'd become, part of me had grown used to him. He was my shadow, my anchor, my excuse. But that's what he had always been. An excuse. I reached forward. The veins snapped toward my chest, and I screamed, not in pain, in recognition. Memories I had forgotten slammed into me like waves. A birthday I spent alone pretending not to care. A friend I ghosted because I couldn't explain the noise in my head. The moment I realized I was capable of cruelty, and liked it, the heart re-entered my body like a puzzle piece pressed too hard into place. I collapsed. And when I opened my eyes, I was alone. No architect, no mirror, no echo, just the hallway, quiet, but not empty. I felt it now. Everything, the grief, the shame, the warmth, the strength, it was mine again. And so was the house. Because I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I was part of it. I didn't just survive the maze. I became its end. And yet, deep in the walls, something still moves. Because patterns don't break on their own. Someone always has to make the choice. And I did, but someone else might not. I thought I was alone now. Not just alone in the room or in my thoughts, but truly, finally alone. The kind of aloneness that hums in your bones when the house stops whispering and the mirrors stop watching. I had taken the heart back. The architect was gone. The echoes had fallen quiet. For a day, maybe two, I didn't hear footsteps that weren't mine. I didn't feel the breath on my neck. For the first time since entering this place, I believed the worst was behind me. But belief is a fragile thing. And this house, it doesn't let you believe in peace for long. It started subtly. A chair was moved. A light I had turned off was glowing again. The smell of coffee, faint and bitter, drifting from a room I hadn't entered in hours. Then the noise began. So soft I thought it was in my head at first. A murmur, a quiet hum of someone talking just out of earshot. At first I convinced myself it was the pipes or the wind moving through the bones of the house. But then I heard my name, spoken clearly, slowly, by a voice that didn't belong to me or to the architect or even to any of the echoes. It was new. And that was impossible. There are no new people here, no visitors, no chance arrivals. And yet that night I saw a figure walk past the end of the hallway. Not fast, not frantic, just walking, as if they belonged, as if the rules didn't apply to them. I ran after them without thinking, turning corner after corner, the hallways stretching longer than they ever had. The figure was always just far enough ahead, just close enough to make me believe I could catch them. But I never did. When I finally stopped, out of breath, I was in a room I had never seen before. It wasn't like the others. This one was clean, bright, windows that let real sunlight in, fresh air that didn't taste of rot or dust, a white couch, a small bookshelf, a photo on the wall of a lake I'd visited as a child, and sitting in the center of the room was her. Not someone I recognized instantly, but someone my body remembered. She looked up and smiled, and that smile turned every instinct inside me upside down. "You took long enough," she said. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She patted the couch beside her, and I hesitated only a second before I sat. "I don't understand," I said finally. She laughed, not mocking, just amused. "You were never meant to." And then she turned to face me fully, and I saw what I hadn't noticed before. She looked like me. Not exactly, but close. As if someone had taken the blueprint of my soul and redrawn it in a different style. Softer, quieter, calmer. The version of me that never came to this house. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm the guest," she said. "But this house doesn't get guests." She tilted her head. "No, it doesn't. Not unless something goes wrong." I felt the room shift. Not physically, emotionally. Like a memory trying to come back, but not quite making it. "You're not from here," I whispered. She nodded. "No, I'm from one layer above. The world where you still exist. Where your body still breathes. I was sent here when you stopped answering." I stood up, shaking. "This isn't real." "No," she said, standing too. "It's too real. That's the problem." She walked to the window, pulled the curtain back, and I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks. Outside. Trees. A road. A sky that moved. "You've been gone too long," she said without turning. "And now the seams are weakening. They sent me in to pull you back. Sent you. Therapist. Sister. Friend. Take your pick. I'm all of them. None of them. I'm just the memory that loves you enough to come after you." That broke me. I didn't cry. I collapsed. Because no one had ever come for me before. Not in dreams. Not in therapy. Not in the worst nights when I screamed into pillows and begged to be found. But here she was. And then she said the thing that split my heart wide open. "If you stay, the house wins. And you forget for real. Not pieces." All of it. I looked around. But I fixed it. I faced him. I took the heart back. You became it," she said gently. "You didn't escape. You settled. That's not healing. That's giving in." The room dimmed. The sunlight outside flickered like a dying bulb. "You don't belong here anymore," she whispered. I felt the pull then, like a string deep inside my chest being tugged upward. My vision blurred. The floor dropped. The room shook, and I asked one last question before it all slipped away. What happens to you? She smiled, sad and proud. I was only meant to find you. And then she was gone. The room gone. The house, quiet again, but different now. Not darker, just waiting. Because I had a choice to make. Stay and become the new architect. Or find the door that would take me home. If it even still exists. And deep in the walls, something whispered, you can only be saved once. There's a myth in this house. Or maybe just a rumor passed between echoes before they fade. It's the kind of story that only surfaces when someone's almost made it out. Whispers of a door that doesn't belong to the house at all. A door older than the first memory, older than the architect, older than even the pain that built these walls. A door that opens once, and only once. Not for the desperate, not for the brave, only for the one who truly remembers why they came in the first place. I didn't believe it. Not at first. But belief doesn't matter in a house like this. Because some things happen whether you're ready or not. The day after she left, whoever or whatever she truly was, I started seeing it in flashes. Not the door itself, but the outline of it. At the end of corridors that hadn't existed before. Behind reflections that flickered just a second too long. In dreams where the only thing I could do was walk toward a shape that kept slipping from my grasp. At first I thought it was a trick. The house's last game. One final temptation to keep me running in circles. But then I heard it. The sound no other door in this place makes. It knocked, once, slow, heavy, like it wasn't asking to be opened, but reminding me that it was there. I chased it. For days, maybe weeks. The house changed constantly now. Its walls pulsed with some strange anticipation. The rooms didn't whisper anymore. They breathed, each breath hotter than the last, almost feverish. Like the house itself was struggling to contain something. Or someone. Maybe me. Maybe something else. The mirrors had all turned to smoke. The portraits bled down into puddles of ink. Even the familiar stairs were gone, folded upward into the ceiling like they'd never existed. But the door, always just out of reach, remained, flickering, taunting, until one night, I stopped trying to catch it. I let it come to me. I sat in a room with no windows and no floor. Just a floating chair and a memory of a fireplace that hadn't been real for decades. I sat there and remembered. Every lie I told myself to survive. Every version of myself I abandoned. I spoke to them, not like apologies, but like confessions. I told them I was tired of rewriting who I was just to make the pain quieter. I told them I was ready to carry it all. And that's when the room tilted, not physically, emotionally, like gravity had suddenly shifted direction, not down, but inward. And when I looked up, there it was. The door, no frame, no keyhole, no handle, just wood so dark it looked like it had been carved from shadow. I stood slowly. It didn't move, it didn't threaten, it just waited. Closer now, I saw the carvings, barely there, like someone had tried to hide them. Names, dozens, maybe hundreds. All scratched out except one. Mine. I didn't write it, but it was written. And the moment I touched it, the door whispered something I will never forget. You finally remember why you came. The door opened, not outward, not inward. It opened away from reality, like it peeled itself from the world I knew and revealed something else entirely. Not light, not darkness, just truth. It wasn't a hallway on the other side. It wasn't a void. It was a room, small, familiar, smelled like soap and sleep, a twin bed with worn blankets, posters half torn on the wall, a dresser missing its top drawer. I knew this place. My brother's room. The night before he vanished. He was sitting on the bed, young, whole, real. I didn't step in. I couldn't. Not yet. Because I knew what this was. Not a portal. Not a trap. The reason I came in the first place. This house didn't build itself on pain. It built itself on a question. What if I could go back? What if I could stop it? What if I had made the right choice? The room pulsed with that possibility, but as I stood there, watching him, wanting so badly to call his name, I understood the cost. If I stepped in, I would stay. Not in the house, in that moment. Forever, a memory, relived endlessly, looped in the comfort of almosts. And outside that room, the house would grow. It would feast. On others like me. On every person who couldn't let go. That's what this door was. Not escape, temptation. The final test. Not of strength, of acceptance. I closed the door. Not with anger. With love. It didn't fight me. It vanished before it even clicked shut. The hallway around me flickered once. Then went still. And that's when I knew I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I was the keeper. The house didn't own me. I carried it now. Not to spread it. To protect it. From those not ready. From those who would come after. Because they will. They always do. People like me. People who think pain can be erased if you go deep enough. And when they arrive, I'll be here. Not to trap them, but to wait. For the one who chooses memory. The one who closes the door. Like I did. For 3 days after the door that opens for no one vanished, the house was almost quiet. Not in the deceptive, blood-humming way it had been before. This quiet was colder. Thinner. As if the house was low on breath. Like it was catching up to itself. But that didn't mean I was alone. Not really. Because something had entered the house the moment I closed that door. Something I hadn't seen, but had already felt. A presence that didn't belong to me or my memories, or even the echo's old design. Something new. Or worse. Something ancient that had just found its voice again. It started with the television. I hadn't seen a screen in weeks, maybe months. But that day, as I passed through a hallway that shouldn't have been there, I found a door wide open, and beyond it, a small room lit only by the flickering gray light of an old television set. Not modern, not flat, one of those boxy, dust-covered monsters from the 80s. No cables, no remote, just the screen turned to static. And within that static, a shape, faint, barely moving, but watching me. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't need to, because she spoke first. You closed the wrong door. The voice didn't come from the screen. It came from behind me. I turned slowly and found the room empty. But the air had changed. It was thick, like sound was trying to push through molasses. I turned back to the screen, and the shape inside the static was clearer now. A girl. Young. Pale. Eyes hollow, mouth slack. She looked almost transparent, but then she blinked. Once. Slowly. And I felt it. Recognition. Not like I knew her, but like she knew me. Had known me for a long time. From before the house. From before I started lying to myself. She didn't belong to this place. She predated it. The girl stepped closer inside the screen. "You're the first to make it past the door," she said. "But you're not the last." I knelt down in front of the TV. "What are you?" She tilted her head. "I'm what's left." Of what? Of everyone who almost escaped. That was the first time I felt genuine dread in days. The girl wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a fragment. She was the collection. A gathering of those who made it as far as I did, but couldn't choose. Some had opened the door and stayed. Some had turned away and been devoured. She was what was left behind when both choices failed. "You made the right call," she said. "But now the house is hungry." I felt the floor beneath me breathe again. Faster now. Uneven, like the house had begun to panic. The girl's face flickered, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw every face beneath hers. Dozens, hundreds. Each twisted in their final expression: grief, rage, regret. "You need to go," she whispered. "Go where?" I asked, but she was already fading. The static thickened. The screen cracked. And then the room vanished. I was in another corridor, one I didn't recognize. Long, windowless, covered in photographs, all black and white, each one of me. But not the me from this house. Versions of me from lives I didn't remember. One in a hospital gown, reaching for someone just out of frame. One at a funeral, face wet with tears and laughter. One as a child, curled in the back seat of a car filled with smoke. And then, at the very end of the corridor, one photo frame still empty. Waiting. The plaque beneath it said only the one who stayed. I backed away. I wasn't ready to be that version. Not yet, maybe not ever. And then from behind the walls the girl's voice returned. Faint, static, soaked. You're not meant to stay. You're meant to open. The words rattled something deep in me. Not memory. Purpose. Maybe the house hadn't chosen me to keep it. Maybe it had chosen me to release it. But not through escape. Through truth. The house feeds on lies, on suppression, on refusal. What if it could be starved? I turned back toward the corridor. The photographs were gone. In their place, a mirror. No reflection, only smoke. I stepped through. And for the first time since I arrived, I felt air, real air, cold, crisp, smelling of pine and fire and autumn. And I heard voices, not whispers, not cries. People, laughing, talking. I stepped forward again, and my foot landed on grass. Not floorboards, grass. The house had let me out. No, not the house. She had. The girl in the static. The collector of the broken. She had opened the door that doesn't open. And now I stood outside, but not free. Because behind me, the house still breathed, still lived. And somewhere inside it, others were still searching. Others were still choosing. And I knew what I had to do. I had to find the girl again. Because she was the only one who understood the next part. This wasn't the end. It was just the threshold. They say when you leave a haunted place, the worst of it stays behind. That its ghosts can't cross the line between then and now. But those people have never been inside a place like this. Because the house doesn't haunt, it inhabits. It isn't chained to walls or staircases. It latches onto moments. And when I stepped outside, I brought a moment with me. A crack, a thread. Something small but dangerous, stretched between the house and the world I thought I'd return to. The grass beneath my feet wasn't perfect. It was too green. The air too cold, like someone had refrigerated memory and forgotten to warm it back up. The world had edges again, but they were blurred, like a dream already starting to rot at the corners. I heard birds chirping, but they didn't echo. They looped, the same pattern, again, again, again. Somewhere in the trees a wind chime rang that never swayed. I wasn't out, I was between. This was the threshold. A space made of stitched together exits. Bits and pieces from people who almost escaped, who clawed far enough into freedom to build fragments of life again. Before the house pulled them back, I saw them now. Flickers. A man in a suit holding a leash with no dog. A woman reading a book that never turned pages. A child swinging on a swing that never slowed down. Their eyes were open, but no one was home. They had stayed in the middle too long, and the house had claimed their outlines, left their shells wandering. I moved fast. Didn't speak. Didn't touch. The air smelled like forgotten names. And then I saw her, standing at the edge of a crumbled dock, staring into water that didn't ripple. The girl in the static. No screen this time. No interference. Just her whole and silent, her hair tangled with leaves and thread. When she turned to face me, she looked older. Not aged. Just burned through. You didn't run, she said, almost disappointed. I wasn't supposed to, I replied. You think that matters? Her eyes locked with mine. You think this place cares what you think you were meant to do? The water behind her shifted then. Not with waves, but with memory. Faces rose from beneath the surface, gasping, screaming, smiling. All at once, and in their eyes, I saw mine. How do I get out? I asked. You don't, she said. Not from here. But I left the house. No, she said. You left the center, not the gravity. There's a difference. I stepped toward her. Then why let me see this? Why let me step out at all? She paused. Then said something that chilled me more than any whisper inside those walls ever had. Because the house is tired. That stopped me. She looked out over the water again. It's fed for decades, maybe longer, on guilt, on silence, on people like you. But now fewer of you are coming. Fewer are willing to forget. You're remembering too much. Healing before it can trap you. It's starving. I couldn't believe it. The house, the thing that had torn through every version of me, was dying. It needed someone to carry it, she said. You were supposed to stay, become the new center, but you broke the loop. That's good, isn't it? She turned slowly. It's dangerous. I didn't understand. She pointed at the sky. I looked up and saw cracks. Long, glowing fractures cutting through the clouds like veins of lightning that never stopped moving. This isn't the only house, she whispered. It's just the oldest one. And then, for a moment, the air screamed. The ground didn't shake, but the moment did. Like the memory was unraveling mid-thought. We don't have long, she said. They'll come looking soon. The builders. The architects. The things that make the houses. I took a step back. What do they want? To start over, she said, with you at the center. No, I whispered. Yes, she replied, softer now. Because you didn't break the pattern. You just ended one chapter. But they're ready to write a new one. Bigger, smarter, hungrier. My breath caught. What do I do? She pointed down. Not at the water. At the cracks you have to fall, she said. You have to go under the pattern. Find the seed. Destroy it before they wake it up again. Where does it go? She didn't smile. Deeper than the house ever let you fall. I looked at the cracks again. They pulsed. With memory. With pain. With truth. This wasn't the end of the story. It was a return. Not to the same house. To the place that built it. And as I stood on the edge of a world unraveling, I understood something awful. I had been chosen, yes. But not because I was strong. Not because I was ready. But because I was unfinished. And that makes me the perfect host. I looked at her one last time. Will I come back? No, she said. But something else will. And with that, I jumped. Through the crack. Into the mouth of the next chapter. Into the core. Falling didn't feel like falling. It felt like being remembered. As if every piece of me the house had devoured, every torn thought, every silenced scream, was being stitched back together in midair. Not with care. With purpose. Like something down below was building me as I dropped. Reconstructing the broken puzzle that was my identity, not to return it to me, but to use it. I wasn't descending into darkness. I was sinking through layers of forgotten design, strata of failed versions of the house, rooms that had crumbled, hallways too unstable to hold memory, doors that opened onto silence and never closed again. I passed them all, and then I landed, not with a crash, with a stop, hard, precise. I stood on a floor that pulsed like muscle. The walls breathed, slow, steady, and alive. The light here had no source. It simply was. Dim, gray, soaked in the color of unspoken dread. The air didn't feel stale but wet, like I'd stepped inside a lung after the breath had gone out. I took one step. The floor throbbed. Another. The walls flexed. They weren't resisting me. They were testing me. The hallway ahead was narrow, but it curved downward. Spiraling. Deeper into a center I couldn't see. I didn't hesitate. Not because I was brave. Because I knew what weighted down there was the origin of everything. The girl in the static had called it the seed. But this wasn't something you could pluck or burn. It was planted in every broken person who had ever entered a house like this. And if I didn't find it, if I didn't end it, this whole thing would start again. Bigger. Louder. Hungrier. I kept walking. The deeper I went, the more the house changed. No more peeling wallpaper or flickering bulbs. The architecture itself was wrong. The walls bent in ways that made my stomach twist. Doors floated in place without hinges. Some rooms pulsed in and out of reality like lungs trying to take their first breath. And every few steps, I saw them. Others, not people. Silhouettes. Prototypes. Half-formed shadows of those who had come before me, or maybe versions of myself that never survived the fall. Some stood still. Others repeated the same motion, scratching, sobbing, knocking against invisible glass. None of them acknowledged me, but all of them watched. At the base of the spiral, I came to a cavern. Circular, massive, carved into the shape of a heart that had never known peace. At its center floated the seed, not a literal one, a mass, a knot of eyes, teeth, and hands, all churning in slow motion, whispering. It spoke in a voice that wasn't sound but memory, and when it addressed me, it did so by becoming me. I saw myself, naked and shaking, standing in the middle of the chamber. You carried me for years, it said, in my voice. Fed me with every lie you told yourself. You're not me, I hissed. No, it agreed. I'm older. I'm the first thought you buried. The first shame you wrapped in silence. I am the blueprint. It stepped closer. Its eyes, my eyes, were endless. You were never supposed to come this far, it said. And suddenly I understood. The house had never been designed to trap. It had been designed to prepare. For this. For me. For replacement. You're dying, I said aloud. That's why I was chosen. You're decaying. Weak. Its smile cut through the cavern like a blade. I'm not dying, it said. I'm evolving. And with that, the walls collapsed inward. Not crumbling, folding. Like paper lit from behind. The other prototypes screamed, not in fear, but in jealousy. The seed turned inside out, revealing a hollow void shaped like choice. This is your final room, it said. No, I said, stepping forward. This is your final lie. I reached into myself. Not metaphorically. Literally, pulled open the scar that the architect had left when I took back my heart, and I tore. Light poured out, not pure, but honest. The seed recoiled, screamed, and began to unravel. Its teeth fell. Its eyes melted. Its hands clawed at nothing. And all around me, the house screamed. Because the seed wasn't just alive. It was the house. The whole damn thing. I had pulled it inside out. And the cost, myself. I fell again, this time upward. Through the prototypes, through the spiral, through every room I had ever touched. The walls burned white, the doors collapsed into dust. And the voice, the seed, cried with the sound of everyone I'd ever loved and lost.
You don't get to leave!
But I didn't answer, because I wasn't leaving. I was ending it. When I opened my eyes, there was no house, no room, just a field. Empty. Clean. My hands were my own again. And in the distance, a small figure stood waiting. The girl in the static, she waved. Then turned, and walked away. Not into darkness, into daylight. And I followed. Not because I needed to escape, because for the first time, there was nothing left to fear. The field stretched farther than it should have. An endless plain of dry grass that whispered without wind. There were no trees, no buildings, not even a horizon. Just gold, pale light, and the soft crunch of my own footsteps trailing behind the girl in the static. But she wasn't static anymore. Not really. The flicker had gone from her edges. Her outline no longer shimmered with distortion. She moved like someone who'd finally remembered the feel of her own body. No more glitch. No more ghost. Just a girl. We didn't speak for a long time. Words felt unnecessary out here. Or maybe they were forbidden. The kind of stillness that surrounded us wasn't peaceful. It was sacred. Something had ended. Something massive. But endings make space. And silence. Silence is how new things begin. Eventually, she stopped. Not abruptly, just like she'd arrived at where she always meant to be. And there, without any cue or signal, the world around us changed. Not violently, not with a shift. It just remembered itself differently. The field gave way to a lake, calm, flat, stretching endlessly into a pale orange sky. And at its edge stood a single chair facing the water. Familiar. Of course, everything in this story had been once. She sat. I stood beside her, waiting. You didn't destroy it, she finally said. I did, I replied. She shook her head. You ended the version of it that lived in you. But it's older than that. Deeper. It'll find another shape. I watched the water, unsure whether she was warning me or mourning something. So what now? Her eyes didn't leave the lake. Now we wait. For what? For the echo. That word should have terrified me. After everything, the architect, the failed doors, the seed that wanted to rebuild itself using my face, Anything described as an echo should have made my chest seize. But it didn't. Whose echo? I asked. She finally looked up at me. Yours. Something in me bristled. I'm still alive. Not the kind that leaves an echo, she replied gently. I mean the kind that ripples. You made a noise too loud to contain. You tore through something ancient. And the sound of that doesn't just stop. I felt it then, a hum in the earth beneath my feet. Subtle. Patient. When will it reach us? She shrugged. Depends. Could be minutes, could be lifetimes. But it's coming. And when it does, she trailed off. What? I pressed. When it does, you'll have to decide again. The fury that had long settled in me flared up, bitter and sharp. Decide what? Haven't I decided enough? She looked at me like I was a child who'd just asked why the stars shine. This isn't about decisions anymore, she said. It's about what remains. The lake shimmered, and in its reflection I saw them. Faces, not mine, not hers. People I didn't recognize, but somehow still knew. Some smiling. Some weeping. Some locked in expressions that could only be described as unfinished. They weren't ghosts. They weren't memories. They were next. What happens to them? I asked. They'll find their own doors, their own thresholds, their own seeds. That's not fair, I said. No, she agreed. But it's true. The chair beside her creaked as if it had just remembered it was old. The wind returned, soft, honest. And for the first time since I fell through the house's layers, I realized something was different about me now. I couldn't hear the house anymore. I couldn't feel its weight. It wasn't watching. It wasn't listening. Not because it was gone, but because it had finished with me. There are no happy endings for people like us. Not because we don't deserve them, but because we learn too much, go too far, get too close to the root of things that should stay buried. But that doesn't mean we're cursed. It means we're keepers, not of pain, not of trauma, of memory, of truth, of warning. She stood from the chair. I have to go, she said. Where? Where I always was, waiting, for me, for all of you. I wanted to ask her to stay, to explain more, to unravel the mystery of her name, her origin, her purpose. But I didn't, because I finally understood. Not every question deserves an answer. Some are meant to echo. She walked into the water. Didn't sink, didn't vanish. Just kept walking until the lake shimmered once, and she was gone. I sat in the chair she left behind, looked out over the glassy surface. The sky shifted, time bent. Somewhere, the ripple she warned me about was forming. Somewhere, a new version of the house was drafting its blueprints in someone else's grief. And when it came, when that echo arrived, I would feel it. Not as a prisoner, not as a builder, but as the last thing the house never intended, a witness. They don't tell you what it feels like to become a witness. Not the church kind. Not the courtroom kind. Something older. Something more sacred. And more terrifying. It's not just about seeing. It's about being unable to look away. It's not a role you take. It's one you inherit. The moment the lake swallowed the last ripple of the static girl's footsteps, I felt the change slide under my skin like ink. Not a mark. A truth. The kind that stains, even if no one else can see it. I sat in that chair for what felt like days, maybe years. Time had no teeth here, no appetite, just rhythm. A heartbeat too steady to be human. And then, one morning, or what the world decided to call morning, the ripple came. Not with a crash, not with the moan of old beams. Just silence. Pure. Absolute. The kind of silence that erases the sound before you even think of making it. And out of that silence, a line appeared on the lake. Not a crack, a scar. A stitch being pulled open. I stood. The air shifted. Behind me, the field faded. The grass shriveled like paper touched by flame. All of it folding back into shadow, sucked inward by some gravity I couldn't see but had come to recognize. The world was ready to collapse again. The ripple was rewriting everything. And this time, it had chosen her. She stepped out of the lake barefoot, wrapped in wet hair and memory. Not the static girl. Not the version of me that once screamed through the architect's cathedral of pain. A stranger, but one I recognized instantly. Her eyes were hollow but hunting. Her hands blood-stained but empty. She walked like someone who had fought her way through rooms that hated her, and she hadn't lost, but she hadn't won either. She had survived. The price of that survival was written across her shoulders. She looked at me like she didn't know whether to speak or scream. I beat her to both. "You came from it?" I said quietly. She nodded. "It didn't want me to, but it's weak. Not gone, not dead, just drained." And now, the house was using her as a fuse. One spark to start again. "Why here?" I asked. "Why me? You were loud," she whispered. "Too loud. You tore a hole and it needed a plug. I'm the patch." The honesty in her voice was worse than any lie. "How far did you go?" I asked. "All the way," she said. "To the nursery." The blood drained from my fingertips. I didn't even make it that far, I admitted. "You weren't supposed to." That hung between us like ash. And then she asked the question I'd been dreading, "Can you show me?" I didn't move. "I don't think it's wise." "I don't care," she said. "I need to see what I'm meant to become." So I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I knew this was the beginning of something new. And I'd already chosen my side. We walked, though there was no path. We didn't speak, though our silence held too many words. The lake faded behind us. The field, now just dust, folded beneath our steps, and ahead of us, a room. No house. No roof. Just a floating room in the void, spinning slow, like it hadn't remembered its own purpose yet. She stepped inside first, and I followed. The room was the exact shape of my childhood bedroom, but everything was mirrored. The posters were flipped, the dresser on the wrong side. Even the light from the window bent the wrong way. I knew instantly this wasn't my room. This was hers, a version pulled from her own mind, built by the house, preserved by the ripple. "What happened here?" I asked. She didn't answer with words. She pointed, and suddenly the bed melted, not into liquid, but into memory. A scene played out, her younger self curled under blankets, a door cracking open, a shadow slipping through. Not a monster, not a demon, a person, a mistake that wore a human face. I looked away, but the room didn't let me. "You understand now?" she asked, voice dry, hollow. I nodded. Too well. The scene stopped. The room sighed. It began to crumble, but not into pieces, into options. Hallways unfolded. Doors split in opposite directions. One path dark and humming with temptation. The other bright but trembling. "You're at your split," I said. "It's where the house asks you who you want to be." She turned to me. "I don't want either." Neither did I. Her hand found mine. Not for comfort, for grounding. And then she did what I couldn't have predicted. She turned away from both paths and sat down, cross-legged, facing the void. She closed her eyes. "I won't choose," she said, "and I won't forget. I'll remember everything and let it sit and rot and stop feeding it." The room fought back. It screamed. Walls bent inward, floor cracked, ceiling wept blood. But she didn't move, and neither did I. Because that's the secret, isn't it? The house can't hold what doesn't run. It can't feed off what refuses to fight. It survives on struggle. But peace starves it. The scream rose, but didn't break us. The light fell, but didn't touch us. And when the room finally vanished, we were still sitting, still breathing, still remembering. We weren't ghosts. We weren't victims. We were witnesses, together, waiting for the next ripple. They tell you that memory fades. That time dulls the edges of pain, softens the blows. But they don't warn you that some memories grow sharper. Some don't fade, they ferment. They sit and swell, changing shape, growing teeth and claws in the dark. And when they finally rise back to the surface, they're no longer memories. They're creatures. Hungry ones. The girl and I had sat in silence for hours, maybe days. The room had collapsed, rebuilt itself, collapsed again. The house didn't know what to do with us anymore. We weren't playing. We weren't choosing. We weren't afraid. And that was the problem. Fear is what keeps the structure standing. Fear is the mortar between its walls. Without it, the place doesn't just crumble. It shifts, twists, rewrites itself to try again. And that's what it did now. We woke up in a forest. Not a real one. But it looked real enough to trick the part of your brain that wants to believe in escape. Tall trees, cold air, the smell of pine and damp dirt, but there were no birds, no insects, no wind, just the stillness that comes before a decision. She stood first. I followed. Neither of us asked where we were. We both knew. This wasn't a room. It was a layer, deeper than any we'd touched before. The house had stopped building rooms to contain us. Now it was unearthing what it thought would break us. That's when we heard the first growl. Not from an animal, not from any direction. The sound came from everywhere at once, as if the forest itself had teeth, and it was warning us we were trespassing. She looked at me. "They're coming," she said. "What are they?" "The memories that didn't starve," she whispered. "The ones we buried without grieving." And then they stepped from between the trees. Not shadows, not ghosts. People, familiar faces we wished we'd never see again. For her, it was her sister. Not the one who died, but the one who watched it happen and never forgave her. For me, it was a friend I'd left behind in a moment too dark to speak of. His smile was wrong, his eyes too wide, his voice perfect. "You never said goodbye," he said to me, with that same light laugh he'd always had. "You just ran, like you always do." Beside me, the girl was frozen. Her sister was bleeding from the mouth, but smiling. "You made it out," she cooed, a voice full of knives. "But you left us in the fire." We didn't respond. The forest grew louder. More of them appeared. Faces. Bodies. Versions of ourselves we couldn't deny. A man with my hands, but his skin burned raw. A woman with her eyes, but her spine twisted in the shape of regret. The forest wasn't summoning monsters. It was holding a mirror. Every person we failed. Every version we abandoned. Every truth we never dared to look at. "You can't run," they said together. "You can only join." The girl stepped forward. "I remember all of you," she said. "I don't forgive myself, but I won't feed you anymore." They moved closer. She didn't flinch. "I won't make peace," she said, "but I won't let you live off my shame." And just like that, they started shrinking. Their mouths opened. Screams or sobs, I couldn't tell. But no sound came. I understood then. It wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about healing. It was about refusing to let the pain define the shape of the memory. "I remember you," I whispered to the friend I abandoned. "And I hate what I did. But I will not carry your voice like a curse." He reached for me and vanished. One by one, the forest emptied. The growls stopped, the cold air warmed, and we were left standing in the ruins of another trick. She looked at me. "You feel it?" she asked. I did. A door. Not a literal one, but a shift in the world around us. Like the house was offering one last path. We followed the feeling, until the forest gave way to a corridor. Endless, white, blinding. There at the end was a wall. No door, no window, just a single word etched into the stone. Confess. We looked at each other. We didn't ask what it meant. We knew. This was the last offering the house would make. Not for escape, for release. But to reach it, we'd have to say the one thing we'd buried deepest. The one truth we never let ourselves speak. She went first. She whispered something I couldn't hear, and the wall cracked. A line vertical, waiting for me. I stepped forward, and finally said it out loud. I left him to die because I was afraid I wasn't worth saving either. The wall split, and behind it, light. Not salvation, not heaven, just choice. We stepped through, together, and for the first time the house didn't try to stop us, because there was nothing left for it to take. The light wasn't warm, it didn't welcome. It didn't cradle or soothe or whisper in soft colors. It just was. Plain, honest, bare like truth before it's dressed up with meaning. It surrounded us as we stepped through the cracked wall. Not like sunlight, but like exposure. It didn't shine. It peeled. Every step we took deeper into it felt like a layer of skin lifting, not with pain, but with understanding. And when the light finally dimmed, we found ourselves not in paradise, not in ruin, but in a room that looked exactly like a hospital waiting area. Plastic chairs, soft beige walls, a fake plant in the corner that was covered in dust, a vending machine humming with quiet effort. The girl sat down without a word, as if her body had known it belonged here long before her mind caught up. I stood, couldn't sit, couldn't stop pacing, because I knew what this was. The last room, the final question, the place where no house, no memory, no monster could follow. This wasn't built by the house, it was built by us. And suddenly, I understood. Every version of the house, every room, every twist and scream, it had all been scaffolding. Not a prison, a path, brutal, cruel, and unspeakably personal, but a path nonetheless. Not meant to keep us trapped, meant to shape us, to prepare us. For this, the girl broke the silence first. I thought it would be worse. I didn't reply. She looked around, picking at a thread on her sleeve. I expected more blood. I chuckled, just a little, and finally sat across from her. "You're disappointed." She tilted her head. "I don't know. I think I'm just tired of endings that pretend to be beginnings." That one hit hard, because this didn't feel like either. Not the end of something. Not the start. More like the stillness between heartbeats, the breath between confessions. She was right. This room wasn't trying to be dramatic. It was waiting. And then, from the far end of the room, a speaker crackled to life. A flat, genderless voice spoke only one word. "Next." We both turned to the door that had appeared where the wall had once been blank. It wasn't glowing. Wasn't marked. Just a regular door with a brass handle and a shadow beneath its seam. The kind of door you see 100 times in life and never think twice about. She stood up, walked to it, but before she opened it, she turned to me and asked, "What if this one really is the last one?" I didn't have an answer. She smiled, but there was no joy in it, just peace. The kind you get when you've run out of ways to run. Then she opened the door and vanished. No flash, no scream, just gone, like the moment between breaths. I was alone. The speaker buzzed again. "Next." I stood. The chair felt heavier when empty, the air tighter. The light no longer peeled. It pressed. Not painfully, but insistently, like it needed something from me. I approached the door, but I didn't open it. Not yet, because something in me stirred. A sliver of unfinished business, not regret, not fear, a presence. I turned around. The waiting room was no longer empty. The seats were filled. Some of the faces I knew, some I didn't. But all of them looked like versions of people I could have been, might have become. Ones who never found the cracks, never confessed, never witnessed. They were all waiting, not looking at me, just waiting. And I realized the room wasn't just for endings. It was a place for choices that were never made, for silence that had never been broken. One by one, they stood, walked to the door, whispered something I couldn't hear, and disappeared, over and over, until only I remained. And then, finally, I understood. This wasn't the end of the house. This was its last gift. Not an escape. A mirror. A moment where all of it, the screams, the rot, the rooms, the seed, the girl in the static, the architect, even the echo, collapsed into one final decision. Would I choose to leave, or choose to remain, as the new witness, the new voice, the one who stays behind to wait for the next to arrive? And the truth, I didn't want to leave anymore. Not because I loved the house, but because I finally knew what it was for. To hold pain until someone was brave enough to sit with it, to remember without feeding it, to stare into the cracked mirror and say, "I see you, and I'm still here." So I sat back down, faced the quiet, faced myself, and I waited, not for salvation, not for punishment, just for the next voice, the next ripple, the next lost soul walking toward a house that breathes between screams. Because I know what they don't yet. That no door is final. And every ending is just the house preparing its next question. I don't know how long I sat there. The waiting room didn't keep time. There were no clocks, no ticking, no shifts in light, just the constant, weightless now. But waiting has a way of sharpening the senses, and eventually, I felt it. That subtle ripple in the fabric of the silence. Like something unseen had brushed its fingers across the surface of the room. Not a sound, not a shadow, a presence. One that didn't belong to the house, or to me, or even to her. Something new had arrived. The air tightened. The chairs around me flickered. Not vanished, just briefly forgotten. For a moment, the waiting room seemed to doubt itself. As if some deeper logic had entered, one the room couldn't predict, couldn't hold. That's when I saw the boy. He stood in the corner, too still to be real. Small frame, pale skin, no older than 10. His hands hung at his sides, and his eyes were black, not empty, but full. Like they had swallowed something too large to carry, and now bore the weight of it in silence. He didn't speak, didn't move, but I felt him looking directly into the marrow of me. I stood, not because I wanted to, because I had to. Something about him demanded acknowledgement, like a final question that wouldn't be dismissed. I took a step forward, and the room changed again. The walls peeled back, not literally, but in meaning. The room stayed the same, yet everything inside it shifted. This was no longer a waiting room. This was a wound, and he was its echo. "Where did you come from?" I asked. His lips didn't move, but I heard his answer in the hollow behind my ears. "You called me." I shook my head. "I didn't call anyone. You tore the seed," he said, "and when it screamed, it made a space. I was born in that space." A chill settled into my spine. "So you're part of the house." He blinked once, and the walls flickered with images. Rooms I'd never seen, doors I'd never opened. Places the house had hidden even from itself. He was made of all the corners the house had never finished building. The thoughts too malformed to become rooms. The potential for horror. "No," he said. "I'm what comes after." The room moaned, soft and low. I stepped closer. "What does that mean?" He tilted his head. "You survived it. You didn't win. But you lived. The house needs a new story now. A new skin. A new shape. I am that shape." I looked around the room. "Then why come here?" "Because this place," he whispered, "wasn't meant for endings. It was meant for containment." And with that, the walls shattered. Not with noise, with silence. The waiting room crumbled inward, folding itself into a single moment. And suddenly, I was outside time again, floating inside a blank space where only the boy and I remained. Except now, he wasn't a boy anymore. He grew, in seconds. He stretched, aged, cracked at the joints like a tree growing too fast. His skin split, revealing layers of faces beneath, eyes blinking, mouths opening. All the people who never made it out. He had absorbed them. "You shouldn't exist," I whispered, "and yet here I am." He stepped closer. The space groaned. "The house didn't die," he said. "You convinced it to sleep. But even dreams have a shape, and I'm what it's dreaming now." I felt heat on my face, wetness in my eyes. "Then why show yourself to me?" I asked. "Why not start fresh? Why not pick someone new?" "Because you're the last witness," he said, "and every dream begins with remembrance." He reached out, and I stepped back. But behind me, there was no floor, just memory. I was falling again. Not through time, through versions. Versions of the house. New rooms I'd never touched. Doors too fresh to rot. The boy was already building, faster than the house had ever built before. Using modern pain, contemporary sorrow. He was making rooms shaped like tweets, doors that opened into forgotten search histories, hallways paved with surveillance and shame, and he wasn't doing it alone. I saw them. Ice. Watching. From outside, from the other side of the echo. Architects of something even larger. They had never come inside the house. They had designed it, not with bricks, but with intention. And now, they watched their new seed take root, in the shape of a boy who spoke like silence and walked like memory. I hit the ground. Hard. Except I wasn't in pain. I was in my apartment. Everything exactly as I'd left it. The sound of the city leaking through the window. My phone buzzing on the counter. The clock blinking 3:33. I stood dazed, cold. Was it over? Was I free? I checked my arms. No bruises. No cuts. My hands. Clean. Then I looked in the mirror and saw something behind my eyes that hadn't been there before. Not fear. Not trauma. Not even sadness. A door. Tiny. Just beneath the surface of my left eye. And in that moment, I understood the house doesn't come through walls anymore. It comes through sight, through what we look at too long, what we remember too well, what we refuse to admit still haunts us. The boy, the echo, he hadn't just shown himself to me, he had passed through me. And now I carried his shape, not because I wanted to, but because the story wasn't finished yet. And somewhere, someone else was already standing at their first hallway. Their first flickering light bulb. Their first silence that didn't feel empty. And when they screamed, they wouldn't hear their own voice echoing back. They'd hear mine. You never notice how quiet your own apartment really is until you've heard silence that breathes. After the boy, the echo, vanished. After the house peeled back from the skin of my memory, I tried to convince myself it was over. I opened the fridge, turned on the faucet, played songs I used to love just to see if they still sounded like they belonged to me. I stared at the floor, expecting it to open. It didn't. I stared at the walls, expecting them to pulse. They didn't. But every time I passed the mirror, I could feel it watching me, not with curiosity, but with familiarity. Like the reflection had grown used to being something else, and now resented being just me again. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw that door. The one behind my left eye. It didn't open. It didn't move. But I could feel it wanting to. As if the house hadn't been erased, just folded down, hidden beneath layers of skin, waiting for a moment of weakness to stretch itself open again. The world outside carried on, but I walked through it like a wrong note in a song only I could hear. Crowds felt too loud. Rooms too tight. Even colors had become sharper, like the house had burned away all softness in exchange for truth. One night, as the city choked beneath its own neon haze, I stood at my window watching headlights stretch across wet pavement, and I knew I wasn't done. I hadn't escaped. I'd just been released. Given a head start, and something was following. I didn't know what, until the letter came. No postage, no return address, just slid beneath my door with no sound, no footsteps. It was sealed with wax, the same symbol etched into the floor of the architect's cathedral. That symbol I now understood wasn't religious, wasn't ancient. It was a blueprint. For a place, for a person. For me, I opened it. The paper was yellow old, but the ink was fresh. It said nothing except, "They've built the new hallway. You are already in it." I dropped the letter like it burned. Because it did. Not the skin. The memory. The floor under me creaked, not physically, but emotionally. As if it had read the same words and suddenly remembered that it wasn't wood or tile or concrete, but invitation. I backed away. My apartment didn't shift. Not visibly. But the door to my bedroom, it wasn't quite right. The handle gleamed too perfectly. The air around it was colder. And when I touched it, I heard something move on the other side. Something that knew my name. I should have run. But when you've lived through the seed, through the architect, through the static girl, and the nursery of lost memory, you don't run anymore. You step forward. The door opened on its own, and I saw it the hallway. Long, pale, stretching far beyond the borders of my apartment. It had no walls, no lights, just an endless line of closed doors, each one whispering, but not in words, in choices. I stepped in, not because I was brave, because I had to know. The hallway didn't feel like the house, not at first. It wasn't decayed or desperate. It was pristine, clean in that eerie way hospitals are. Like it was built not to scare, but to study. Each step felt like a camera shutter. Click, click, click. As if something beyond the walls was documenting my movement, cataloging every twitch of my hand, every shallow breath. I stopped in front of the first door. No number, no handle, just a keyhole, rusted and black. I knelt, stared through it, and saw a room full of mirrors. Not reflecting me, but versions of me. Younger, colder, crueler. They stared back not with recognition, but resentment. I backed away, moved to the next. Behind that keyhole was a hospital bed. Someone I loved was dying in it. Someone I had walked away from in real life. I shut my eyes, kept moving. Each door offered a memory I wasn't ready to carry. But this wasn't punishment. This was exposure. The hallway wasn't showing me horrors. It was showing me everything I'd hidden to survive. The truth, raw and uncoated. After what felt like hours, or days, I came to a door that was open, wide, and waiting. Inside, the boy stood, but he wasn't a boy anymore. Not entirely. He was a mix of the seed's fluid horror and the stillness of the witness. He wore my voice on his lips, and her eyes in his skull. "Welcome back," he said. "I never left," I answered. He nodded. "That's why we need you now." I stepped into the room. It was empty. No walls, no ceiling, just space. He gestured. Behind him, a chair, and in front of it, another person, asleep. I knew instantly they were the next. The new soul just beginning their journey. And suddenly, it made sense. The hallway hadn't been built for me. It had been built by me. By everything I carried. Every scream, every silence, every lie I forgave too late. The boy walked past me and vanished into the dark, leaving me with a choice: walk away, or sit and watch, bear witness again, guide the next without guiding, see their pain, and not steal it, feel their terror, and not interrupt. Because the cycle doesn't stop with the strongest scream. It stops when someone chooses to stay, to remain inside the hallway, not as a prisoner, as a lantern. I sat, and the next one stirred, eyes fluttering and open. And the first thing they saw was me. There's a silence that comes after awakening. An in-between moment where the world hasn't arrived yet, but your breath has. That's where they were, this new one. This stranger waking up in a place their mind didn't remember, but their bones somehow did. I didn't speak, not at first. I just sat as I had done countless times now, a fixture of this place, an echo, keeper. The first voice they would register if fear didn't choke it out. Their eyes fluttered like shutters caught in wind. Then they opened, and found mine. They flinched. They always flinched. Because they could feel it even if they didn't yet understand it. The weight in my eyes. The knowledge that their life, as they knew it, had already cracked somewhere deep behind them, and that they had stepped, unknowingly, into a corridor not built with bricks, but with regret, with decisions, with truths too wild and heavy to confess out loud in the world above. They opened their mouth, but no sound came. I understood. You can't scream yet, not when the horror hasn't shaped itself. They sat up slowly, dragging their breath through the thick quiet that clung to everything in this final room. No walls, no ceiling, just gray sky that never turned, and a ground that felt more like memory than floor. I watched them the way you watch a spark in dry leaves, not hoping for flame, but expecting it. "Where am I?" they asked. Their voice was raw. I waited. Let the silence settle again. Then I said what someone once told me in a dream, back before I understood its meaning: "You're in the place where truth stops pretending." They didn't ask what that meant. No one does, not really. Because once you're in the hallway, you already know. You just don't want to know. Their hands moved across their chest, checking for wounds, for familiar aches. I knew what they were really checking for: proof that this was still them, that they hadn't been rewritten. Was I taken? They asked, voice cracking. "No," I said. "You were chosen." That word always rattles people. They hear it like a curse. And it is. Being chosen means you carry something sharp, something the house can use. They looked around. "Where are the others?" I shook my head. There are no others. Not yet. You're the first for this version. They looked at me with widening eyes. Version, yes, I said softly. You're not the beginning. Just the new beginning. The house has lived 1,000 shapes. I was one. There were others before me. But it's your story now. They tried to stand, and the ground shifted beneath them. Not cruelly. Just enough to remind them this place moves with what you feel. Not with what you want. I stood too. You'll find doors, I said. Some locked. Some open. Some that don't even look like doors. They stepped back. What happens if I walk through the wrong one? There are no wrong ones, I said. Only the ones you're not ready to open. They stared at me like I was a puzzle, something left out in the rain. Are you real? I smiled. Not with joy. With honesty. Sometimes. Their breath hitched. And then they asked the question every new one eventually asks, will I survive? I walked closer. Not threatening. Not warm. Just present. I don't know, I said. Survival here isn't about living. It's about changing. And change always asks for something back. They closed their eyes, trembled. I remembered that feeling. The urge to scream, to run, to demand that it all be undone. But the house doesn't do undoing. It only moves forward. Then, from the gray horizon, a door appeared. Its frame was crooked, its surface pulsed. They turned to me silent, trembling, waiting for permission. I gave none. Because the house doesn't grant permission. It gives choices, and you have to make them alone. They stepped toward the door. Each footfall sounded like heartbeats. They reached for the knob and turned back to me one last time. Will I become like you? That one always hurts more than it should. I nodded slowly. If you're lucky. Then they stepped through. And the room was empty again, but only for a moment, because I could feel it already, another presence stirring, another ripple forming, another story beginning. I sat, I waited, not as a savior, not as a warning, but as the last voice they hear before the walls start whispering. The house still breathes, it always will. But now, when it opens a door, when it plants a seed, when it sings its songs of rot and rebirth, it does so knowing someone is always watching. Someone remembers. And the story doesn't end. It just waits for someone else to step through. And listen.